Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of December 2025. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the astrology of the next month ahead. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got lunations, lunar cycles, full moons, new moons, ingresses of planets into new signs. We've got solar phases with planets exiting their shadow, going under the sun's beams. We've got out of bounds planets, malefic enclosures, benefic enclosures. We've got it all. And we're going to break it down in detail for you. We're going to give you the big picture. We're going to zoom into the details, and hopefully we'll have a good time doing it. So if you are joining me here today, please let me know that you're joining me here in the chat, and hope that you're doing well wherever you're at. Sergey is here. What's up, Sergey? Says, hi, Spencer from Virginia. December is going to be interesting, but January even more so. Crazy lineup in Capricorn with 2 Kazimis and then Aquarius too. Absolutely, friend. And we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. January is definitely going to be an interesting astrological time, but we've still got some ground to cover in December, friend. A lot of squares with the nodes, turning points. A lot of squares with Saturn, with Sagittarius and Pisces planets. So we got to get through that phase first, and then we'll start talking about the Kazimis in Capricorn, which I think a lot of this is going to be leading up to, but that's an excellent observation. And it's really great to see you here in the chat, friend. Jody is here, says, hi, I'm tuning in from work. Nice, Jody. I see, Jody, that you have a little mobile icon by your chat here too. I'm testing something new out today, friends. There are 2 different orientations of the broadcast today. One is the landscape mode that you normally see on YouTube, and then another is this vertical mode where you can watch on your mobile phone. So if you're tuning in from your phone, welcome, and I hope it looks legible for you here today. But Jody, it's wonderful to see you. Hope you're doing well, and I'm excited that you're here with us today. All right, friends, I have a few announcements before we get going. Of course, today we're going to be talking about the astrology of December 2025, and we're getting ready for 2026. As Sergey was talking about in the chat, we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming up in January. We've got some ground to cover in December. If you need some help with working through any of these challenges, you can find me over at spencermichaud.com. My books are open for December, for January, whenever you want to come in and schedule. They're open right now, actually, so if you want to schedule for the end of November, it's a great way to come and prepare yourself for the year ahead. We can look at the next 3 months in detail. We can look further ahead if you need to look further ahead. We can do your natal chart, look at your natal story, your natal promise. All of these things can help you to prepare for all the twists and turns of fate. And honestly, right now, friends, things are a little bit wonky and up in the air. And there's a lot of uncertainty. So astrology can actually help us with that because it shows us the unfolding of that over time, the greater cycles of that over time. And I think that one of the things that we're going through in December here is we have a lot of planets that are going through sort of the bottom of the wheel of fortune, but getting ready to ascend. And that's exciting. And being able to prepare for that and know which areas of life that might be most beneficial for you to put your energy into is something that astrology can help us with as well. So head on over to spencermichaud.com, sign up for a reading on the Book Now button, and I hope I will see you soon. Also, it is sale season, friends. We have a big sale coming up for Spencer Michaud Astrology, the digital store, as well as Third Coast Mojo. I have a number of recordings over on my website, spencermichaud.com, and they are all 50% off right now until December the 5th, until the full moon in Gemini, right? And there's all sorts of cool stuff there. I have probably over 60 to maybe 80 hours of webinar material in that store. You've got all the decans webinars, which each of them are 3 to 4 hours long, where we go through all 36 decans through 12 different webinars. Those webinars are just chock full of information. They talk about the relationship between tarot and astrology. They talk about the mythology associated with this, the daimons and spirits associated with each decan. We talk about planetary dignity, all of those things there. Just all of the knowledge I had up to that point dumped into those webinars. Those are 50% off. I have a series that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, Dignity and Devotion, where we broke down 7 traditional planets through those same lenses of mythology, through the lenses of astrological magic as well, and how to deal with a planet in your own chart if it is maybe troubled a little bit, like how we might be able to remediate it. There's a lot of planetary remediation in those webinars, so you can find that whole series 50% off. And then I have another one where I talk about specifically the relationship with the tarot and astrology and the symbols associated with that. So go to spencermichaud.com. I hope you'll take advantage of that. This is probably definitely the biggest sale that I'm going to do all year, and I hope that you will benefit from that information. Speaking of which, my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, if I can spit it out, has a store on an Etsy account, and it's called Third Coast Mojo. And she's having her big holiday sale right now, and all sorts of wonderful things. Astrologically elected materia in the hoodoo and conjure tradition, but also using traditional astrological magic elections. 25% off every item in the store right now. You can find all sorts of cool stuff. There is a new product that she just launched. It's called Peaceful Home, and it takes advantage of a wonderful Venus and Taurus election. Venus in its home sign, its home domicile. I've been wearing this a lot. We've been going through a lot of changes in our household with kind of shedding old skin and getting ready for new starts, and some of those things can be stressful. And by wearing this Peaceful Home, I think my partner and I have been going through this, and I think a way that is very holding space and holding grace for one another, and it's making that transition really smooth. So if you're having any challenges within your household and you want to create some peace and some calmness and some groundedness, this is a great product for that. So check that out over on Etsy, 25% off your entire order. All of these things make great gifts for the holidays too. So I hope that you'll support both of our businesses here and help us keep doing the work that we're doing, and then hopefully get some good stuff in your home, some good energy in your home, some good information into your brain and into your eyeballs. And yeah, thank you so much for supporting the work that we do. Okay. Also, subscribe to this newsletter. I have a newsletter that helps keep you up to date with when I'm going live, when new sales are happening, what's going on in the sky. You get to see all of the postings on YouTube. You get to see all of the different kind of new deals and classes that we have going on. Helps you stay up to date. And it's sort of taking some of the algorithmic randomness away from things. By signing up for the newsletter, you're having a direct line of communication with both Spencer Michaud Astrology and Third Coast Mojo. And sometimes you'll miss things if you're only signed up like on Instagram or YouTube, etc. But this is a great way to stay connected, and I hope that you'll take advantage of that. And then finally, today, if you want to support the work that I'm doing, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live on YouTube today, or a super thanks after the fact on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron on that website. That really helps us to keep the lights on here. It really buys us the gift of time, energy, and resources to be able to continue to do this work. As we move forward into the new year, lots of changes, and I think that both Tanya and I at Third Coast Mojo and Spencer Michaud Astrology we're gonna need support from viewers like you to keep doing this work as we've gone through some changes within the way that we do our lives, our businesses, etc. Lots of changes, and we're relying on your support to keep going. So thank you so much, everyone who has contributed over the years and is able to do so moving forward. Okay. All right, friends. Let's see. We got some more people tuning in. Let's see. Trauma Raised Me is here. It says, hi, Spencer, watching you from Central Illinois. Found you through your daughter. Oh, excellent. Venus is my main planet. Chinese fire rabbit. Well, welcome, friend. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited for everyone that's been joining through my daughter Sophie's TikTok and Instagram. You can find her over at Sag Moon Magic. We've got some really a nice influx of energy coming in from people that support her. So welcome today, and I hope that I will guide you on the path. Leanne is here. What's up, Leanne? Says, hey from the UK. Oh, I like that you are rhyming here, friend. Hope everyone is well. Hope you are well, friend. Thank you for joining us today. It's nice to see your face here in the chat. Ani is here. What's up? Ani says, joining from my travels in sunny Las Cruces, New Mexico. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Glamping and chilling. Ooh, that sounds like fun. I could use a glamp right now. Some glamour camping. That sounds like a lot of fun, Ani. And thank you for the super sticker already, friend. Thank you so much for your generosity. It really does help, friends. Every little bit helps, even if you every dollar helps to help us keep these lights on, help us to be able to add to the library of research, to do all of this work, to purchase all of the different subscriptions that get more expensive by the year, to do the production values behind this, like to do things like StreamYard, the Zoom meetings that we pay for, all of this stuff. The scheduling apps for astrology, all of your donations and gifts go to helping to pay for the overhead for this. So Ani, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Ani says, I got you, bro. All right. Thank you, friend. Okay. So friends, don't be shy. If you are here today, let me know you're here. I love seeing that. I love those of you who have been checking in even after the fact and leaving me a comment and letting me know that you're watching. It means the world to me. There's so many different things that you could be utilizing your attention in this world that's just so loud and chaotic. But the fact that you choose to spend time with us here on this YouTube channel and interacting, it really means a lot to me. So thank you for those of you who have been leaving comments, whether it's live or after the fact. Appreciate you so much. All right, friends, let's talk about some big picture thoughts for the month. We're going to be going a few hours today. I'm going to see how long I got in me. There's a lot of astrology. I'll try to pace myself. I'm feeling the influx of Sagittarius energy coming in, and I'm trying to slow down so that I don't get too excited. I've been having some good ideas today. I've been having some good, the feelings that come with liberated energy after we go through the Scorpio letting go. I've been watching a series that I highly recommend for those of you who are history buffs. I've been watching a show called Death by Lightning on Netflix recently, which tells the story of James Garfield's rise to prominence and then his subsequent assassination. Actually, it's kind of sad, but it's also just a really interesting look at history. It's based on a book called Destiny of the Republic. And it's so good. And it's given me a lot of ideas about directions to move in, things to explore astrologically. And I think that this is an example of some of the energy that we get when we start to get inspired by something, right? When something moves us emotionally, like we've been experiencing over the Scorpio season, then what do we do with that? What do we do with the reflections that we have? What do we do with the inspiration? And I think that in December, we're going to be thinking about, where is this liberated spirit and energy going to be going? What's the new vehicle once we have let go of the old forms, composted the old things, when we start to dry out from some of these emotions that we've been feeling, the necessary emotions, the catharsis that I think the grand water trines have been giving us through November, we're going to start, I think, seeing the path forward, or at least being inspired to find the path forward, right? A lot of turning points in December. With all of these planets going out of bounds, we may have to think outside of the box, right? So this is our first kind of big picture thought. Everything's out of bounds. Not literally everything, but it feels like it. Over the course of December, we are going to have Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon going out of bounds at various times. There will be a point towards the end of the month where all four of those planets are out of bounds simultaneously. For those of you who are new to that concept, I think it's a concept from traditional astrology that talks about a planet that's moving outside the normal declination path of the sun. And just metaphorically, what that means is a planet is sort of acting as a maverick. It's acting outside of the normally socially acceptable way that it would act. And when all of these planets, the moon is not an uncommon one. The moon goes out of bounds usually 3 to 4 times a month. Those are times when we're feeling a little extra emotional. or we might be feeling a little tired, like we're pushing ourselves beyond our limits physically. But with a planet like Mars going out of bounds, Mars is going to be out of bounds the entire month of December. We might be feeling our anger a little bit differently. We might be feeling like taking actions that we might not normally take. With Venus out of bounds, we might be attracted to new things. We might have a different desire nature than we normally would. We may be, like throughout the holiday season, we may be purchasing things that are, maybe very different than we would have in the past. Mercury out of bounds, we may be communicating very differently. We may be having ideas that are outside the box. And none of these are necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we may have to be careful about figuring out how to moderate the more extreme natures of these planets, because these planets can go to their natural extremes when they are out of bounds. So that's the first thing that I'm noticing. We also have, I think, our last grand water trine, the direct Mercury grand water trine. And that's going to be happening around this December 6th through December 11th. As I'm recording this at the end of November, we're going through the Sun's grand water trine. So think about the themes that you're experiencing right now if you're enjoying this with me live, and reflect upon some of the themes that you've been going through late October through November, because Mercury is going to help us to move forward with some of those things in December with that grand water trine. It's also going to make an opposition to Uranus. We have one opposition happening retrograde today with the, actually, excuse me, we have the Sun making its I'll get it. We're having the Sun making its opposition to Uranus, a retrograde Uranus, as I'm recording this. But Mercury is going to make its direct opposition to Uranus retrograde in the midst of this grand water trine. So getting some shakeups of ideas, shakeups of our perspective on things, and that can be invigorating. We also have Jupiter going into a malefic enclosure for part of the month and into January, where we might have some difficulty with the expansions of our life, or just a delay. I think that's the way to think about it. We do have Saturn being in the benefic enclosure. Now, these are concepts where in the malefic type, where we have Saturn and Mars kind of putting pressure on a planet, giving it a lot of responsibilities, maybe blocking some of the manifestations of it, where we feel like we're backed into a corner. So Jupiter significations are going to feel like that this month. I will break that down in depth and show you some examples. But a benefic enclosure is when Venus and Jupiter are enclosing a planet and protecting it. So I think Saturn significations are supported this month with the benefic enclosure. It's only a few days at the end of the month. So if you're feeling like you're having difficulty with your luck with Jupiter, with expansion, I think that one of the lessons in this month is we're going to have to work hard for it with Saturn being supported. But I do think that hard work and that slow and steady wins the race type of energy is going to be really important. We may feel pressed to move more quickly. When everything moves into Sagittarius, speed feels like the overall essence that is coming into our lives, or the desire to move more quickly. And some of that can be invigorating. Other times we need to mitigate that. I'll tell you, this past week or so, I've been starting to feel my age a little bit. I'm feeling it in my knees. I got up a little bit too quickly from a very, like a kind of a squatted position. I was trying to fix something underneath one of our vehicle. And I got up and my knee popped. Like I've been just dealing with a sore knee. And what it's really had done for me, it has forced me to slow down and be much more intentional about my movements so that I don't make it worse. And I think that's a good metaphor for December, is we may want to move quickly, but because we are hampered a little bit, maybe by an injury, by something that is forcing us to slow down, that can lead to better outcomes moving forward. I would also say this month we have both the Sun, Venus, and Mercury squaring the nodes at the south bending of the nodes, which is sort of that lowest point where we are going to the peak of I guess peak is not the right word, but the depths of letting go, the depths of decrease, and we're going to start moving towards increase. We're going to be starting our ascension towards that north node, towards the increase of faith, moving away from letting go of some of the old forms and start moving towards a vision potentially. So I will break that down. Really important turning points for many of the planets and topics within our life. And then finally, big picture, both Mars, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus are going to be squaring Saturn and Neptune over the course of the month, over the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces. So we've got a lot of tension between the vision, Pisces, and how to take action towards that vision. And I think a lot of it is leading up to what Sergey was talking about earlier with the Kazimis in January in Capricorn of Venus and Mars, and then all of those planets opposing Jupiter in Capricorn, and then a lot of the Aquarius conjunctions that are going to be happening. Like there's Kazimis happening. But I think December is a preparation for that. And we may have to go through some of the tension that leads us to take action, some of the friction. Think about the tires that are meeting the resistance in the road to help move us forward. And that's what we're going to be seeing in December with these planets squaring Saturn and Neptune. We've got to get clear on our vision before we can take effective action. If we don't get clear on that vision, and we got to ask some tough questions about our life, we may feel some strain with that, right? But that can lead us to move forward in a intentional way, rather than in a way that that repeats some of the old narratives that we have been trying to release in these grand water trines with the Scorpio sort of axis in Scorpio 3, where we're trying to discern the things that we need to release. Okay, so we want to be intentional about that. We have to know our why before we start taking action out in the world. And I think these squares are going to help us with that. I'm going to check in with the chat before we talk about our medium range view. We've got a lot of people stopping in here. K-Wow's here. What's up? K-Wow says, good afternoon from North Carolina. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well, friend. Ani says, I'm out of bounds, literally. Well, there you go. You're right in alignment with everything that's happening, Ani. Trauma Raised Me says, 2 of my main planets will be out of bounds. Oh, man, so you're going to be feeling this as well, right? Trauma Raised Me says, you're saying we should find some balance in the swing, like the middle ball in Newton's cradle. I like that. That is a great example. There is that kind of perfect moment, right, where we find that sweet spot in the middle. And I think that's a great way of dealing with just life in general, is finding that sweet spot between extremes. Trauma says, my mama's main planet was Mercury. She left here in 2024. I get why. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, friend. I lost my mom in 2022, so understand that feeling. It's tough, and one day at a time. And they're still with us on some level, and I still feel the presence of my mom around me. But it's a hard time, and don't rush the healing process. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, definitely feeling pressed right now. Pressed, but now crushed. Maybe some Tai Chi. Yeah, Tai Chi is a great way to find your center once again, friend. Devin's here. Selena's Gateway. Good afternoon, Spencer. Good afternoon, Devin. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Nice to see you here in the chat. Always enjoy hearing your take on things, friend. Ani says, let me see if I can find some YouTube channel for squat movements, useful for camping too, not just protecting your knees. I could use that. Yeah, Qigong or Tai Chi might help. I've been doing a little bit of Tai Chi, but I probably could use a little bit more right now. I'm not in like pain every single moment of the day. I've just lost a little bit of range of motion, and getting up from a squat is becoming more painful. I'm not sure what I did. I hope it was just a sprain. I hope I didn't like tear any cartilage or anything like that. But I did feel like a little pop when I got up, and it wasn't good. Devin says, good afternoon, Spencer's neighbors. I love it. I love it, friends. Okay, thank you, Ani. I appreciate that. Okay, Venus and Scorpio for you, Trauma. So you're getting a Venus return right now. So we will we'll try to break it all down for you. Venus is going through some stuff this next month, so I will try to give you all the details and hopefully guide you and shepherd you through those changes gently. All right, friends. So we've talked about big picture thoughts. Let's talk about some of the medium range things. So we've got lunations that are happening. So the lunations for the month, I usually do the new, the full, and the quarter moons. There are more phases that you can look into, but these are ones that are turning points within the month. So we have a full moon in Gemini on December the 4th at 13 degrees of Gemini, where we're probably going to be feeling a lot of options and feeling a lot of directions that we could move into, but having difficulty reconciling all of the details around it. We're trying to bring together body and spirit at that full moon with the sun in Sagittarius, and I'll talk about that in a second. But oftentimes we need to ask about what the possibilities are, to explore our options, and then eventually to make a choice, right? We can't keep all of the options open. We can't keep all the plates spinning. That can be difficult. So this might be a moment of choice potentially. We have a last quarter moon on December the 11th at 20 degrees of Virgo. Last quarter moons are sort of these existential crises where we are starting to feel a need to release, right? When after we get to the full moon, the light starts to wane. It's releasing, the moon is releasing its light, and we have some sort of crisis point, crisis of consciousness usually. And this could be a feeling where the sun is in Sagittarius 3, the third decan of Sagittarius, where we are carrying heavy burdens, trying to get something to the finish line. And Virgo 3 is really all about what legacies are we going to pass on? How do we take this material process and bring it to an ending? So how do we find the spiritual strength necessary to bring a material process to its ending is probably going to be some of the themes we're exploring at that last quarter moon on December 11th. We have a new moon at 28 degrees of Sagittarius on the 19th of December. So a new start for carrying those 10 wands that we have in the 10 of wands. That's going to be an important thing moving forward. We have a first quarter moon at 6 degrees of Aries on the 27th of December. That's going to be the moon in square to the newly ingressed sun into Capricorn, where we were trying to decide which material reality we want to manifest, just like we're making New Year's resolutions around that period of time. What projects do we want to start? Where do we want to direct our material goals throughout the year? And how are we going to do that in a way that supports our personal sovereignty and individuality with the square at 6 degrees of Aries? Ingresses this month, we have Mercury moving into Sagittarius on the 11th of December. So Mercury is going to be returning back to the area that it retrograded out of and then finally leaving its retrograde shadow. Mars is a big player in this month. Mars is going to be moving into its exaltation in Capricorn, a place that it really enjoys being, a place where it's very effective, a place where when we're taking actions, we can be very strategic about it, and we can have great endurance for carrying out the things that will lead to success, for climbing the mountain of success. So a really important time for Mars in December, moving into Capricorn, and then eventually coming into its cazimi, its renewal in the heart of the sun in January. The sun's going to move into Capricorn for our winter solstice in the northern hemisphere on the 21st of December, a return of the light. This is where we start seeing the daylight increasing. We're not quite to the equality of night and day yet. That happens at the equinoxes, but at the solstices, we have these changes where in the summer solstice, the light starts to diminish, and at the winter solstice, the light starts to return. So maybe a return of hope. Even if we've been struggling lately, that Capricorn winter solstice can be a hopeful seed that we're planting for the year ahead. And then finally, on the 24th of December, Venus is going to be moving into Capricorn and preparing for her cazimi and renewal in the heart of the sun in January as well. So both Venus and Mars preparing in Capricorn to be reborn in the new year. And that is a very exciting thing for many of our topics in our life. And I will explain that when we go into our daily breakdown of the transits. Solar phases, these are relationships of planets either moving direct or retrograde, moving under the beams of the sun. I'll explain that in a second, or exiting the retrograde shadow. On the 10th of December, we have Neptune stationing direct at 29 degrees of Pisces and getting ready to ingress into Aries in the months ahead. So we're going to be having a big shift with an outer planet moving into a new sign, and eventually we're going to have Saturn moving into that sign of Aries and conjoining Neptune as well. We talked about that a lot on I was a guest on Melissa LaFara's Energetic Principles podcast. Check that out. It's in the collaboration tab on my YouTube channel. We had a long discussion about that. So that can help prepare you for that. But Neptune stationing direct, getting really clear about our vision and really clear about maybe some of the illusions that we've been under. Maybe we've been really hoping for something to happen, but we might not be dealing with reality. And I think that Neptune moving direct can help us to figure out what things we will be willing to sacrifice for to be able to achieve our goals, our visions, and our dreams. And I think that that can be a really powerful thing with Neptune moving forward. Mercury is going to exit its retrograde shadow at 6 degrees of Sagittarius on the 16th of December. So what that means is that Mercury is going to start transiting new ground after its retrograde cycle. So oftentimes when Mercury is stationing direct, it is going back over territory that we've already visited. When it exits its retrograde shadow, then we're starting to see something new come along, new messages, new ideas, instead of just revisiting some of the old material that we've already gone through. So that's an important moment. On the 25th of December, Mercury will exit the beams of the sun. Oh, actually, excuse me. This is a very Mercury retrograde broadcast today. I think I'm going too fast. I need to slow down my brain a little bit. So appreciate your patience with me today. Mercury is going to go under the beams of the sun at 19 degrees of Sagittarius. So it's really actually fascinating because Mercury has done a lot of what ancient astrologers would call phasis movement. Phasis is when a planet is moving in and out of visibility. It's an omen that is speaking. And when Mercury is stationing direct, it's starting to speed up, and it's going to be going forward again and then coming back under the beams of the sun to be renewed in the heart of the sun in its direct superior conjunction rather than the inferior conjunction that we were experiencing yesterday at the new moon in Scorpio. So it's interesting to see that we have just Mercury making all these moments of phasis, right? All these renewals moving so quickly. So it could feel like ideas are just coming and we're trying to just contextualize all of them effectively so that they can get from our brain to our mouth, which sometimes can be a little clunky when we have too many thoughts racing in our minds, sort of like I do here today. Okay, the last thing that we have in our mid-range view is out-of-bounds planets and enclosures. So this is actually a pretty important part of December's forecast, is we have a number of out-of-bounds planets. Mars starts out our out-of-bounds exploration by going out of bounds from November the 27th all through the month of December, all the way until January the 3rd. So this is going to be really important for your Aries area of the chart and your Scorpio area of the chart and the topics associated with that, because Mars is the steward or host of those planets, or excuse me, those signs, right? So we're going to be seeing Mars acting outside the norm, acting outside its normal way of socially acceptable movement, action, etc. We could also be seeing a lot of people getting really frustrated with the social situation. We've got a lot of anger that's been simmering for a long period of time. And when Mars moves out of bounds, we might see some of that bubbling over. So that's another indication for us to try to utilize that energy productively. Okay, like there are lots of Orphic hymns, or there is an Orphic hymn to Mars that talks about turning that anger into plowshares, implements of the field, implements of productivity rather than conflict. And I think that that's a really good meditation for Mars out of bounds. Is it's not that we want to repress or ignore our anger, it's that we want to do something productive with it. How do we do something productive and effective with those feelings that are coming up that won't just lead to destruction, although there may be some things that do need to be dismantled so that we can move forward. But how do we work on building as well after we've dismantled some of the things that are no longer serving us, whether as individuals or as a collective? The moon's going to be out of bounds from December 3rd through December 7th. Not that uncommon, but it's nice to know when those periods are going to be coming up. From the 15th of December to January 7th, Jupiter retrograde is going to be in malefic enclosure. And that basically, I explained that earlier in the show, but it basically means that Mars and Saturn are putting pressure on that planet and making it feel a little bit stuck. And it's going to start when Mars moves into Capricorn, and it ends with Venus conjoining Mars at 18 degrees of Capricorn. I believe that happens in early January, on the 7th here as we're talking. The moon will be out of bounds from the 17th to the 22nd again, and then Venus moves out of bounds on the 20th of December all the way till January 3rd. So again, desires may be different. We may be looking towards things that we would normally never be attracted to, whether it's physical relationships or, I don't know, books or things that bring us pleasure. We could be seeking things out outside the norm. And that could be invigorating on some level. It also can be a little bit dangerous if we're not careful. From the 21st to the 24th, Saturn's going to be in that benefic enclosure, starting with Venus moving to 25 degrees of Sagittarius. And that is the square, I believe, with Venus and Saturn, and then Venus is moving into that benefic enclosure relationship. I have a little bit of uncertainty as to when it ends. It possibly ends on the 24th, but there's also a possibility that it may end on the 27th. I will show you that when I get to that in greater detail and my reasoning behind it. But there's a little bit of ambiguity with it. Part of the ambiguity is just cross sign enclosure, and I'm trying to weigh in my mind if that is a thing or not. Mercury goes out of bounds from the 28th of December to the 15th of January. Ideas that could be coming to us from out of the blue, communications, things that we may have never communicated, it normally might be coming out of our mouths, right? So we have to kind of think before we speak on some level. But we may be chasing some ideas that we would normally never consider because of necessity with Mercury out of bounds. And that can lead to some invigorating circumstances as well. And then finally, we end the month with 4 planets out of bounds: Mars, the moon, Venus, and Mercury, all out of bounds from the 30th of December to the 3rd of January. The moon will be out of bounds from the 30th to the 4th, but all 4 of those planets are out of bounds for like 3 or 4 days at the end of the year. So interesting times, all right? Okay, so those are our out of bounds enclosures and our medium range view, okay? And let's see. Let's just check in with our chat here and see where we're at with all of this. What do you say? Thank you so much for all these comments in the chat here. Appreciate all of you just amping up our engagement, but also just sharing your thoughts and sharing your observations. It is nice co-creating with this, with all of you. Moana is here. What's up, Moana? Says, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the live. Appreciate you being here. I love your little icon there with the beautiful flowers. Very nice. Nice to see you here. I believe, Moana, is your screen name changed with the MCB? Did you have the cat claw before? Are you the same person? You'll have to let me know in the chat. I've been getting screen names, channel names as the display rather than your chosen name for your channel. And it just sometimes will make it confusing for me as to who everybody is. So let me know who you are in the chat. Ani says, as a child of Mars, I am stoked about the Mars Cazimi in Capricorn, initiating a higher goal while being rugged. Merry Christmas to me, just like baby Jesus. I will be reborn. I love it. Yeah, I think that a lot of us are going to be feeling a new burst of energy. And I think, like I said, that can feel really invigorating, especially if we've been in a rut, or if things have been changing in our lives where we really need to make a new start. Um, I've been talking on this channel a little bit. My personal life is changing too, Ani. My partner is she's being laid off in December, and the two of us are going to have to, with our shared efforts, figure out how to replace her full-time job income. And some of it might be through taking the leap, working together, uh, doing some bold things that the two of us would never have considered had things been uh, just status quo. I'm just feeling this energy, I'm feeling the anxiety, but I'm also feeling the excitement of something new coming. Um, so I'm just trying to gently prepare all of you here for maybe some potential changes. Hopefully there'll be positive changes. Hopefully I'll be able to offer even more value for all of you here. And but I feel that rebirth coming. And I think that the thing I'm trying to work through the most with this is the patience with the process, and to go through the letting go and the shedding of the skin first before rushing into the new thing. I think that's going to be part of what December is all about, is getting clear about where we want to go next. And how do we do that in a way that is in alignment with our values and our integrity? This is something that I think about all the time, Ani, is I have a lot of, this is, I think, a good quality, but also can be a limiting quality in a society that doesn't always respect this quality. But I have a lot of trouble doing anything that I don't believe in. Like, I'm very stubborn in the fact that if something isn't in alignment with my values, I just won't do it. And sometimes I will suffer because of that. And I appreciate that about myself, but also sometimes it makes my life a little bit more difficult than it has to be. I'm not a good conformist. I'm very nonconformist. And we'll have to figure out how to work within a society that in a lot of ways is going even further and further from my ethical integrity, and figure out how we can change that society and be people of integrity in a world that is rapidly shifting towards enshittification. And I think that those are questions that we'll have to have as a community moving forward. All right. Devin says, interesting, Mars out of bounds the same day as Saturn stations direct, right? It's all connected, friends. We live in this interconnected universe, and it is so beautiful. And seeing one planet handing over significations to another is just really powerful, right? We talked about the Mars out of bounds, Saturn stationing direct in the Astrology of November. If you all want to go back and revisit that too. Devin probably had some really interesting thoughts about it at the time, so check him out over at Selene's Gateway as well. Ani says, no wonder retrograde Gazemia and the new moon totally fits getting out of the rain and finding this amazing camping. Plus, I got good news on the apartment I'm waiting on coming along. New moon and new Mercury. All right, Ani, it sounds like you have some exciting things coming, friend. I love to see it. All right. Trauma Raised Me says, my mama would call the Mercury bobbing and weaving the Muhammad Ali shuffle. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? Yeah, it says, sounds like her. Oh, I love that. I love it. The Muhammad Ali shuffle. I'll have to, that is a great image, friend. Okay. Let's see. New books, you say? Maybe, yeah, new books. We'll see. This is part of my New Year's resolution, is how do I make more time to read the books that I have before I keep investing in new ones. I'm getting a little bit on a history kick right now. There's a book that inspired the show that I'm really into right now. It's called Destiny of the Republic, that inspired the Death by Lightning show on Netflix, which is excellent. It talks about James Garfield, the 20th president of the United States, and he's a really inspiring figure. And I felt genuine sadness at his death. Spoiler alert, but I mean it's not a secret. he was assassinated, and I felt genuine sadness around the conclusion of that in the dramatization of it, just because he represents, I think, what a lot of us are searching for right now: somebody who stayed true to their values, that took on corrupt forces, and really never wavered from it. And I really am feeling a lot of emotions around that right now, and just inspiration, sadness, but also feeling like, how do we carry the torch of James Garfield moving forward and be that change that he was trying to enact in his time, and move it forward into our time? Because what you learn when you study history is it's so cyclical. We're dealing with really similar issues that we were dealing with in the late 1800s over 100 years later. And how do we become his legacy, or the legacy of something like that, some inspiration of that nature? So check out Destiny of the Republic. Just check out Death by Lightning on Netflix. It stars Michael Shannon and Nick Offerman, who I'm a big fan of. He writes some great books about history as well that are really funny, but also very informative. Oh, friends. New Moon Inner Healing is here. Says good afternoon from Eastern Canada. Nice to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well over there, north of the border. Love when our Canadian friends stop by. My grandmother was born in London, Ontario, so I have a special place in my heart for all of our Canadian friends stopping in. Ani says, cross sign and closure. Been considering this. I learned somewhere that it was a no, but it makes sense since no prohibition may be applicable. Yeah, an interesting thing to explore, right? When we get into the fine details of an ancient technique that we can't necessarily just ask the ancient astrologers, is this right or not? We have to discern it from the very limited material that we have and then test it out in theory, right? Trauma Raised Me says AI has been changing names. Yeah, yes. Don't get me started, Trauma Raised Me, on my AI rants. I'm very negative towards AI right now. So if you get me started on AI doing stuff, I would probably get up on my soapbox, and I'll try to avoid the worst of that today. But yeah. He says, you got this, Spencer, and your partner. Thank you for the encouragement. Appreciate you. Part of the AI is, a lot of AI is coming and threatening a lot of people's jobs. And this is something that happened to me and my partner. Is I think part of the layoff was due to AI taking over some of the skills that she had, and people in her organization utilizing AI to replace her. So this is part of the reason I've been sort of on a series of rants about it. It's starting to affect me very personally, and not that I don't get fired up about things that don't affect me, but when it starts to hit home, it just raises emotions in a more intense way than it might otherwise. So if you all have been studying the challenges of AI replacing the labor force, its environmental impacts, and its stealing from artists and musicians and creators, keep doing that research and keep asking those questions, because it is having real world impacts on people, which is me and my partner and other people. Moana says, good eyes. This one is my other account, and thanks for the sweet words. Yeah, I thought I saw a little thing in there, but I just appreciate you joining us from whatever account that you're joining here. Paintings by Mare is here. What's up, Mare? Says, painting a new series of birds while listening today. My Sag rising is excited for the season of lights. I love that, Mare. I love that you're painting while listening to the astrology. I've been feeling some creative juices starting to flow. I picked up my guitar the other day. This will date me, but I was listening to Pandora, which is a kind of a Gen X millennial type of thing. And I heard a Roxette song. You guys remember Roxette? And I was like, I should learn that on the guitar. I like that song. And I played a Roxette song. And I sort of miss writing. A lot of the songs that I was writing in the past were kind of historical nonfiction. I wrote a song about a man who tightrope walked across the Twin Towers in 1977. I wrote about Gandhi. I wrote about a Vietnam vet that I met down the street. I wrote about a woman who used to take photographs in Chicago, whose rolls of film were found at an auction. Her name was Vivian Meyer. And I'm just thinking about maybe re-engaging with some of those things. So it's always encouraging to see all of your creative projects that you're all working on. It makes me inspired to continue to engage with my own. So keep sharing with me all of the things that you're working on, friends. Ani says, my Cap 9th is exalted with Saturn. I feel you on that. I can settle and put energy into something not aligned with my higher purpose, whatever that is. Amen to that, friends. New Moon says, that's such a Leo thing. Stay true to your authentic self. It is. I had a thought about this. Yeah, it says new moon inner healing says coming from a Leo moon, it's all going to work out for you and your partner. I'm sure. I hope so, and I feel that. I think it will. I think we have a lot of good energy with one another, and a lot of skills that we can offer to the world that we can hopefully monetize in a way that's ethical. You know, your thought about the Leo thing, I've been thinking, this is another thing I've been thinking about with artificial intelligence and sort of the, especially with tools of what some people are describing as like the democratization of creation through things like typing in prompts in Midjourney and through like, there's tools that musicians are using to type in prompts to create music. And the Leo in me was like getting really irritated about it because the sun, and this is, I think, a bigger picture thought about AI, Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius. To me, AI is such a threat because it is the threat of not just democratizing, but homogenizing what makes us special as individuals. What makes a lot of us special as individuals, as artists, is the work and the energy and the perspective and the time and effort that we put into gaining these skills. As a musician, I put years, decades of my life into learning how to do these things and how to cultivate these skills. And it's coming through my unique individual consciousness. And when we just feed a prompt into AI, which is literally stealing people's voices to create music with, like there's new technology that's coming out where you can type something in and Paul McCartney's voice can sing it for you, like from the Beatles. And I think that that's really dangerous. And eventually, if we keep doing that without learning the skills that make us special, maybe not everybody's meant to be a musician. Maybe not everybody's meant to be a painter. Maybe we have our own individual points of genius that we're putting out into the world. But when we keep stealing that work from artists, and when we just put them into the wood chipper, eventually what happens is we start putting out more and more banal mid material. And then the things that the AI is learning on just becomes more and more and more homogenized because there's not that beautiful, those beautiful mistakes that we make as artists. That's what makes us unique. It's not just the complete polishedness of it. It's the mistakes that we make. It's the little quirks that we have. And I want to express that we shouldn't lose that as we move forward into this next generation of technology. We have to stay true to that. The things that you feel are mistakes, or that's what makes you unique. The little paintbrush slip, the little bend in a note, all of those things are irreplaceable as individuals. So how do we maintain our individuality when the technology is just completely stripping us of that in real time? So these are things that I'm thinking about for sure. Yes. Ani says we cannot settle. Sorry, absolutely. Taku is here. Says, hello, Spencer. Nice to see you this evening. Greetings from Germany. Nice to see you, Taku. Hope everything's going well your way. Over across the pond. Always love to see our international friends joining us here. Trauma Raise Me says, history repeats and also rhymes sometimes. I absolutely agree with you on that, friend. It definitely does. Devin says, just started Ken Burns' American Revolution. Ooh, I want to see that. It's been good for Mercury in Scorpio. I like Ken Burns. I'm really just feeling attracted to learning historical nonfiction right now, because as an astrologer, it's such amazing information to see just what people have been talking about, history rhyming and repeating. I think I might be doing some more of that on the channel and just examining things from those lenses. Thank you for that, friend. Okay, we've got so many great comments here, friends. I'm gonna have to go through a little bit quickly on this so we can get back to the Astrology of December, but I love all these comments. Please keep them coming. Yes, I love it. Okay. This is me now. Says, hi, Spencer. It's Veronica tuning in again, second week in a row. Thank you for coming back. Veronica, appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is an honor to have your attention for a second week in a row. And he says, na 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 na. She's got the look. There you go. The Roxette reference. For the record, the song that got me was It Must Have Been Love by Roxette. And it feels like a wintry song of letting go and nostalgia, and it felt very scorpionic, and I was just feeling emotional. I was like, oh, I want to connect with that. So that was the song that I connected with. Let's see. Drama Raised Me says, the flow of emotion in the poetry and paintings and music cannot be duplicated. Viva la resistance. Absolutely. Absolutely. Devin says, regarding music imperfections, we'll never know the lyrics Otis Redding forgot. So instead, we have the whistling part in Dock of the Bay. Ooh, I love that. And it's beautiful, right? He forgot the lyrics. He did the whistle. That's what made that song amazing. That's what, and I'm guarantee you that an AI generated song would never have put that type of interesting thing in, you know? And if it did, it would have watered it down so much that we wouldn't really be talking about it today. All right. Yes. Paintings by Mare says, wabi sabi, the Japanese concept of beauty in the imperfection. My new paintings are exploring this concept. Perfectly said, Mare. I love that concept. I love the wabi sabi concept of letting nature complete the final 10, 15% of it and seeing that part as beautiful, not as something to be constantly reworked and refined. It's that is what makes it great. And I hope we can keep that concept alive. And it sounds like you're doing so with your creative process. All right, friends. Excellent conversation. Thank you for inspiring me and getting me all fired up today. I feel super fired up with all this. Let's start talking about Sagittarius. So in December, well, a few hours of the sun moving through Sagittarius 1, but today, as I'm recording this, we're in the final throes of Scorpio, final degree. Sun's going to move into Sagittarius this evening as I'm recording this. We're going to have a whole 10-day period at the end of November with the sun in Sagittarius 1. I broke that down in great detail in the Astrology of November, so please go check that out. But here is Sagittarius 2. Just brief review. Sagittarius 1, speed, action. When we liberate something from its old form, it's searching for a new form. When we finally find the vehicle that will contain our liberated inspiration, then we get to Sagittarius 2, and we start to see some kind of resistance that tests our vision. Okay, Susie Chang is an excellent tarot reader, scholar, and she has a book about the decans that talk a lot about the connection with tarot. And I love the way she describes Sagittarius and the chronological narrative. She talks about the speed of the arrow in Sagittarius 1, the strength of the archer to pull back the bow in Sagittarius 2, the resistance that we need to take aim and to refine our aim towards our target. Remember, Sagittarius is this centaur that has a bow. In some ancient explorations of Sagittarius, it was just the bow, right? Or just the arrow itself. So here we are trying to combine with a lunar decan, lunar and Mars ruled decan in a Jupiter ruled sign, Jupiter, a planet of vision. We're trying to combine body and spirit with our actions, right? We're trying to unify everything and overcome that resistance. Oftentimes during Sagittarius 2, we will have to overcome a nemesis of some sort, someone who is resisting our vision. And we have to learn how to exert our willpower through our experience. The daimon in this decan is kore. Kore is a sort of, it is a generic word for Persephone. Okay, it basically means maiden, but the maiden they're referring to is Persephone in her queen form. Persephone went through a lot of changes. She was a maiden in the Aries decans, where she was abducted into the underworld, and then eventually through her experience became the queen of the underworld. So we have to rely on our experience in Sagittarius to overcome some of the resistance we may have towards our goals. That takes great strength, as the Book of T calls this decan, the Lord of Great Strength. Okay, Austin Kaba calls it the bridle in 36 Faces, which is sort of the way we direct our vehicles, our horses of life. We've got really powerful fixed stars in this decan. Antares is a royal fixed star of Persia that talks about obsession and passion towards the goal. So we have to be careful about getting too obsessed with something. Ras Al Gethi is in the constellation related to Hercules, the kneeling one. So finding humility within this process is very important as well. Hercules is a figure in myth that learns through experience. He learns humility through experience. So that might be part of what we're going through here. So this is December 1st through December 11th. Now, the first thing that we see with this, and we will bring, where did it go here? I'm going to share my screen for you. And you'll get to kind of take a look at what's going on astrologically. So what we have here is we're going to start just talking about that Mars out of bounds. We talked about this a little bit in our big picture of thoughts and in our medium range view. So we won't belabor the point here, or I'm going to be here for 4.5 hours. I love the long form, but I start to get tired after about 3 hours, and understandably so. I think I just get hungry around that time. So if you don't want me completely fading towards the end, I'll go through a little bit quicker. Mars out of bounds. It's going to be hanging out around the third decade of Sagittarius around this period of time. So a lot of our energy around this period is going to be directed towards in the first half of the month. Okay, so we've got two different segments of this. First half of the month, Mars is moving through Sagittarius 3. And as we will see later in the broadcast, Sagittarius 3 is associated with the 10 of Wands. And that feels like we're carrying a great weight trying to get to the finish line. It is the end of the solar year, where we see at the winter solstice the return of the light, the return of the increase of the daylight. So with Mars out of bounds here, I think a lot of our actions are going to be directed towards how do we just get to the end of this? How do we get to the finish line with this? I know just sharing some of my own experiences in life and that of my partner, I hope it's instructional. I hope it's helping to contextualize some of this. But what I see with this in my own life right now is I've been talking about some changes in how my family's work has been going with my partner, having to go through a job transition. And what I see from her at this is she has to go into the job that she was being laid off from for like the whole first half of December, right? She's trying to get to the finish line. She's trying to carry the weight of her responsibilities towards the end in what is somewhat of what may feel like a little bit of a hostile environment, because all of the feelings surrounding being let go from a position, but then still having to go in and do your job professionally. That's one example of how we might be carrying a heavy burden to get to the finish line. And then once we're released from that, Mars is going to move into Capricorn 1, where a lot of our energy is going to be directed towards trying to find the new fertile ground, the new start that we want to make. And I can see this like happening in my own life exactly. Like, so having to go in and resolve the old situation, get to the finish line. And then once that situation is resolved, figuring out where we're going to plant our new seeds. So I want to see in your life, share with me over the course of the month, is there something that you are trying to get to the finish line with, carrying a heavy burden, carrying a heavy responsibility? And then halfway through the month, are you thinking about what you want to do next? Has necessity forced you to make a new start, or are you doing this willingly, right? Everybody has a different risk threshold, right? We talked about this a lot with Melissa LaFara about Saturn and Neptune and how do we deal with risk. For my partner and I, we're Taurus moons. I wouldn't say that we're passive, but we tend to take things as they come. I think that we have a lot of patience, and we have a lot of, if things aren't like a complete disaster, we're like, okay, well, we can make this work. But when circumstances change, then as a person who is dealing with inertia, we have to become like that bull that needs to get up and start moving and change direction. And inertia is I think our biggest challenge to overcome when we're faced with changes as a collective, just any of us. How do we pivot, right? This is what Melissa LaFar and her partner were talking about. He's a Capricorn sun, and he's like telling her, pivot, pivot, pivot. And for some people, pivoting is easy. If you have a lot of mutable placements in your chart, pivoting isn't the most difficult thing in the world. But if you have a lot of fixed placements, pivoting is really difficult. So this Mars out of bounds period could help us to pivot, especially when we may be more the type that takes things as they come. We may have to start getting that 1,000-pound bull off of the ground and start moving in a new direction. And it's going to be like one step at a time. But the beauty of that is once you get going, once that bull gets going and it starts running, there's no stopping it, you know? And with this Mars out of bounds in Capricorn, if you make a plan and you start getting that yourself moving, there's going to be no stopping you moving forward. And that could feel really good in the moment. You have to be careful, okay? You don't want to trample people or gore someone along the way. But I think that there could be some really positive outcomes to this as well. Ani says, Sag 2 Nemesis. I have Sun in the 12th, hidden enemies. My father has the moon in Sag 2. Coincidence? He is resisting my help? Doubt it. Yeah, I mean, you might be the resistance that he's pulling against, right? Trauma Raised Me says, it starts on Thanksgiving. I'll try to remember to be extra patient starting that day and work on being the fire extinguisher. I love it. We always preach patience on this channel. We preach moderation and patience. Doesn't mean we preach just passivity or letting people abuse us. We have to have healthy boundaries within that too. But I think whenever we're faced with newness in our life, taking the time to reflect and to think about what we need to do moving forward so that we can do it in a way that benefits not only ourselves, but our community as well is super important. So I'm always in favor of that, friend. Trauma says, kind of like Exorcist 2, if you haven't seen that. James Earl Jones plays the village chief priest who does battle with the demon. He talks of the locusts who are born to resist the brushing. There you go. Brushing of the wings. There you go. Hard to stop a train, as my martial arts instructor said. Yeah. Yeah. And here's a shameless plug for Third Coast Mojo. Tanya has a bunch of Mars and Capricorn materia. I'm wearing a lot of it today, like to power me through a longer form astrological live stream. But man, when you are getting Mars and Capricorn energy, you do feel unstoppable. You feel like, okay, I've got to get this done. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to cut through any obstacles. I'm going to overcome any blockages. It is hard to stop us when we have a really powerful Mars. Yeah. Working on healthy boundaries, friend. Yep. It's not easy. Sometimes what was the right answer becomes the wrong one, and doesn't mean that the previous answer was wrong. And sometimes what was the right answer in the past becomes inappropriate for the situation. So staying flexible in our lives is really important. All right. So that's our Mars out of bounds. And as we move forward, I'm going to just move forward here. We're going to move towards a full moon, okay, in Gemini. And I'm going to do an entire live stream on this coming up in the weeks ahead. But our full moon in Gemini is going to be on the 4th of December at 13 degrees of Gemini. If you are familiar with the tarot, the card associated with Gemini 2 is the 9 of Swords. And in the 9 of Swords, you see a figure who is laying awake at night, maybe having a nightmare, maybe having some anxiety, having difficulty reconciling things that are pulling them in many different directions. So one of the things that we're working through at this full moon is the sun is giving us our inspiration, right? It says in the second 10-degree section of Sagittarius, I want to unify my spirit and my body to move towards the goal. When we have the full moon in Gemini, though, there may be things that are trying to destabilize and disrupt that goal through distraction. So this full moon, a lot of this full moon may be, how do we make choices? How do we eliminate distractions? How do we explore our options, but then let go of some of those to move forward? One of the main goals of Gemini that I've learned over time, and this is true in my own life too, I'm a Venus and Gemini 2 native, is that we can't always keep every option open. Part of the story of Gemini is learning how to let go of one of those twins and say, you know what? we don't have to necessarily completely bury this in the underworld forever, because Castor and Pollux exchange time on Olympus and in the underworld. But there may be a time period where this is our focus, and this other option has to be released for the time being. And this might be a moment where we have to really get clear about which of the options we want to pursue and which of the ones we need to just let lay fallow for the time being. Now, one of the very interesting parts of this full moon, first of all, Venus and Mars are co-present with the sun. But the biggest thing that I see with this is both the sun and the moon are going to be at the bending of the nodes, the south bending of the nodes. We clarified this last live stream. I had a question about that, but this is the south bending. This is when the sun is at the south bending. The moon is actually at the north bending, okay? The south bending is a place that, from what I'm understanding now, it's sort of like the lowest point in like a ditch or something like that, or the lowest point where we are starting to move towards increase. If you think about where the planet is, it's starting to move away from the south node, a place of decrease. And in this case, it's in Virgo, a place where we have an attachment to form and the how rather than the why. And we're starting to move towards the increase, the north node, in Pisces, which is more concerned with the why and less with the how. So to me, this full moon and the sun at the bending of the nodes here, and these other planets at the bending of the nodes that we will see unfold over time, really speak towards starting to get in touch with meaning in your life. We all sometimes have our habits, our ruts, our forms. You're looking at example A of somebody who really, once they start getting into a routine, really difficult to get out of it. That has some its advantages. I've been doing a live stream, or I've been showing up on this channel for pretty much 8 years straight. I've rarely missed a weekly live. And that's the good part of this. The downside is that when the necessity comes to change, it's like that bull. It's like that oil tanker trying to change direction. But in this case, the form is less important than pursuing what is important to you and meaningful to you on a spiritual level. The form has to change, okay? The values that animate the form, that is what is eternal. If you can get in alignment with your values when the sun is at the bending of the nodes, and how your identity is going to express those values, the form becomes secondary. Like I've learned this in my life as somebody who has changed their careers a number of times, a couple times, really. I've gone through some necessities of doing professional music, being a music teacher, and transitioning into being a professional astrologer. And what I learned through that transition was the light that animates my spirit, the soul flame, is trying to express something. And the form could be music. The form could be storytelling. The form could be teaching. The form could be astrology. The form could be the myths that express this. And the essence of what I'm trying to express is actually very similar in my music classes and in my astrology classes, right? It's just its form has changed. And this is something that I think we'll come to realize at this south bending of the nodes, is that the sooner that we can be flexible with the how, the sooner that we're going to start moving towards something that makes us feel good because we're in alignment with our soul's purpose. So these are really important turning points with these planets going through the bending of the nodes. Mars has gone through the bending of the nodes. I believe it's happening pretty much as we record this. The sun's going to be next, and then Venus is going to go through the bending of the nodes, and then Mercury later. So this is important because Mars, the sun, Venus, and Mercury, those planets rule 2/3 of the topics in our chart. There's going to be so many opportunities to move away from attachment to form and move towards meaning. It's not easy to do. especially if you have a lot of Virgo placements. This is coming from a Virgo, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, stellium person. My routines and the form are really important. The how matters to me. Like the ends do not justify the means to me. Like if something is, if I'm trying to move towards a goal, how I get there is equally as important as where I'm going. This is going to challenge people who have that type of mindset. You may have to get more in alignment with the end goal, the purpose, and be flexible with the how, right? And really, the reason for that is multifaceted. But what I'm observing, our world is changing so quickly. You know, we are in an inflection point with human history. And I know I've been really down on artificial intelligence, but I understand that it's probably not going anywhere. But I think it's a really important moment for humanity as far as the choices that we're making as to whether we're going to unfold that technology in a benevolent way or in a way that is completely destructive to our livelihoods, our environment, and our creativity. So getting into alignment with your beliefs and what is important to you is going to be the first stage in manifestation. This is what we learn in Pisces, is that the first stage towards creation is being able to visualize it, having a vision, having a dream. And if you can do that, it's so much easier to make it real, right? If you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you believe in, what you create is going to be chaotic. It's not going to be an accurate representation of the vision, because the vision is hazy, confused, etc. So utilize this full moon and all of these bending of the nodes, planets at the south bending to get clear on your vision. That's going to start leading to the, let's see, I'm going to go back to the chart here, go forward a day. And here we have December the 6th, okay, where we start to see the realizations that come up, like the choices in front of us, the connection with purpose rather than just form. And as we start to unfold, Mercury is going to go through its last grand water trine, okay? And in the series, all these planets that are moving through the bending of the nodes, they've gone through the grand water trine purification ritual. It's been really emotional. I don't know about any of you, but there's been a lot of tears falling. There's been a lot of emotions that have come up, a lot of grief and sadness of trying to let go of the old forms that aren't serving us anymore, or that just can't possibly because of the changes and circumstance. And this is our final opportunity to like tie up loose ends, to think about, okay, this is in the past. This moment is gone. This moment has ended. We need to make sure that we are wrapping it up and not glamorizing that past. This is something that when I was looking into the James Garfield story with Death by Lightning, he was a Scorpio 3 Mercury and Sun, and I thought that was just fascinating that his chart was being lit up. I see this all the time with historical figures, actors, etc. Their charts being lit up, and then they come to prominence even after death. So a lot of this is trying to move towards an acceptance of reality, an acceptance of what is changing, rather than trying to hang on too tightly to the old form that has proven that it is not going to sustain us moving forward. The way to survive, the way that humanity has survived over centuries, millennium, is its ability to adapt. And the people that don't adapt to the changing circumstances are the ones that get left behind, and that, quite frankly, probably have a greater suffering. Now, that doesn't mean that when we're adapting that we need to completely let go of our values. There is a way to adapt and to initiate an adaptation that is ethical. But those are questions that we're going to have to ask moving forward, is how can you stay in alignment with your values and adapt to a changing world so that you can survive those changes? So that's going to be from the 6th through the 11th, that grand water trine. Mercury is going to make trines to Saturn, to Jupiter, and to Neptune through all of those throughout that period of time. And really, there's another part of that grand water trine that's happening simultaneously. It's not really a part of the grand water trine. It's just happening in the midst of it. And that is on December the 8th, we have Mars squaring Saturn. This is a pretty big aspect for the month, one of the bigger ones. These are two planets that are sort of these outer, I don't know if the outer is the right word, but they are slower moving planets, traditional planets. And when Mars is squaring Saturn, we often have this feeling of one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake. And this is an aspect that can be very frustrating. So Mars in Sagittarius 3, carrying the 10 wands to the finish line, trying to do the last mile of a marathon. Barn eager is a word I like for Sagittarius 3, where we are starting to recognize home and the release from the burdens, and we get this burst of energy. So we may be getting this burst of energy to finish something, but Saturn comes along and is blocking us a little bit. Think about it like this. This is just an image that came to me. Let's say that we're on a long journey and we can see our home in the distance, but we have a large body of water that it comes up as an obstacle, like either a large lake, a river, something like that, that we have to cross, and we have to get pretty wet, right? Like think about a rushing river that's blocking our path. And that river is going to be these emotional sacrifices that we're going to have to make to get there. Sagittarius 3 talks about physical sacrifices, spiritual sacrifices. I think Pisces 3 talks about the emotional ones. And what are we willing to sacrifice emotionally to get to the finish line? And when these two planets are squaring off, not only are we going to be pushed to the limits of our physical capabilities, but we're probably going to be pushed towards our emotional limits too. So that's a really long-winded way of saying practice extra self-care around this time. Know that you're probably going to be compelled to keep going, because there is a spirit in Sagittarius 3 called a Nanke, which is the force that compels the earth to spin on its axis. So you may be compelled to keep going, but you're going to be like, probably this is kind of like I know I have to keep going, but it's so hard. Like it's that kind of vibe, right? With Mars squared Saturn in these two signs. And the other thing that I find with Sagittarius and Pisces squares is external journeying versus internal journeying. What narratives are inspiring us to keep going? I would say a lot of the Pisces action is coming to terms with our own personal narratives and mythologies. So we may have to be realistic and start to wake up from some of the illusions that we had about how our life was supposed to turn out. To get to a finish line, to get to a new start, sometimes you have to let go of an old dream. Maybe that's the river that we have to cross. Maybe it's not just a physical, emotional thing. Maybe it's, hey, if we want to get to that new start, our beliefs have to change. It's painful sometimes when we have to let go of a dream. I mean, look at, I'm going to keep referring back to this show I just watched because it was so powerful. In Death by Lightning, James Garfield represented a very progressive political movement to eliminate corruption in American politics. And we know what happens to folks like that often, which is really unfortunate. But with him, a lot of that dream was killed or was delayed and had to find a new form. And that often can happen when we lose the driving force behind something. And in our own lives, we have to examine which narratives are we holding on to so tightly that we have to start making adjustments. Sometimes we have physical limitations that cause us to change our dreams. I'm experiencing this with a minor, which I hope is minor knee injury. Sometimes I want to just move through my world quickly. I want to be able to have all this flexibility, do this movement. I have furniture that's intentionally on the floor so that I get up off the floor and maintain my flexibility. but I'm having to be a little bit slower, more intentional, because I kind of pop my knee a little bit. And as we age, as our life circumstances change, we sometimes have to adjust our expectations. And this might be a moment of adjustment of expectations to come into alignment with the reality that we're living in now. As much as I want to just throw artificial intelligence and the changes that are happening with that completely in the trash, I know that that's not reality. I know that there will have to be some adjustments to the new reality that we face. Now, I can still be a vocal force for considering the humanity behind that rollout or whatever it needs to be, okay? But if I'm completely just saying, nope, I don't want to accept that at all, that might not be realistic. These are things that we have to come to terms with. Now, there may be some people out there that are attached to the Luddite type of experience, and I mean that in all the positive ways. We use Luddite as a pejorative, a negative in a lot of ways, but the Luddite revolution was one that was resisting industrialization in the time that we were talking about with James Garfield, late 1800s, early 1900s. These were folks that, as a matter of principle, said, we don't want to replace craftsmanship. We don't want to replace doing things with our own hands. And there will be some among us that say, I'm going to completely reject and resist that out of principle. And maybe I'll be one of those folks, but maybe I'll have to make adjustments as well. Maybe we all will have to do that. Maybe we all will have to think about how to make adjustments in real time to the changes that are presented to us. All right, a lot of chats coming in here. I'm sorry if I don't get to all of them. These are such great thoughts and reflections, friends. Ani says, Van Gogh's zodiacal releasing shows the timing of his fame after death. We often see this with artists and actors and all of these and historical figures for sure. Let's see. Ani says, my dad is a Cap Sun. You can't make this up. Astrologer, good. Appreciate that. Trauma says, Saturn be cock blocking. I mean, Saturn is the ultimate cock blocker for sure. So you're not wrong on that, friend. And honestly, Mars is sort of the astrological cock. So this is really, that's a good metaphor there, friend. Yeah, regarding the Mars square. Yes. Heather Johnson is here. Nice to see you, Heather. Cap rising, Aquarius moon. Leo sun says, shoot me now, I rebuke. Yeah, Heather, with Leo stuff, in our charts, we are facing the, I talked about this earlier, Heather, if you were here, but just a lot of the Pluto and Aquarius, a lot of the Pluto combined with Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius that happened a few years ago, the implementation of artificial intelligence, a lot of the Leo individuality is under threat, right? And that is something that, on one hand, the democratization of tools is not necessarily a bad thing. Like more people being able to be creative doesn't have to be a bad thing. But how do we do that in a way that helps us to maintain our individuality and humanity, especially when we want to, society wants to force us into this homogenized type of experience. It is something to really consider. Yes, Heather says, I rebuke. Many of us will. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I hear you. My goodness, friends. You got a lot of these placements are affecting people in an individual way. Trauma says, maybe a good collagen supplement could help you. I have to start taking my collagen again. I was taking that in my shake for a while, and then I stopped because I switched my breakfast routine. I do take MSM, which is a sulfur compound that's supposed to be really good for your joints, but that's a good tip. Maybe I will have to do that. Trauma says, my granny was a Capricorn and said she could be, I'm a mean granny. That's just how I am. Sometimes Capricorns are just telling you how it is, right? And we need that in life sometimes too, right? Perfect metaphor, Ani says, right? Yes, the cock blocker. Ani says, Saturn always be cock blocking me. P.S. My nickname used to be Big Ball. It's funny. Oh, man. Okay. All right, friends, let's keep going. So the next thing that we have in our little exploration, before I do that, so we're coming to the close of Sagittarius 1, but do me a huge favor, friends. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thank you so much for returning if you're new and you're coming back to the channel. It really, it fills my heart up with joy to see familiar faces each week. It helps us to build a nice relationship with one another, to get to know one another as well as we can through these screens. Do a stretch if you can. I'm going to stretch out these hips. I'm going to stretch out this knee a little bit. We want to keep moving. One of the things we have to be cognizant of when we do long form spending time together on these screens is we got to keep moving. You know, if you're able to, I started something new this week where there's a new feature in my broadcasting software that allows me to broadcast in both landscape and portrait mode so that you can watch on your mobile phone. So one thing I would maybe even suggest moving forward, if you want to test this out, go for a walk when you're listening to these longer forecasts and broadcasts. How can you get out and have movement while we're still engaging with one another, right? How can you get out and do a moving meditation? I think that's going to be something that could be really beneficial moving forward. I love encouraging movement and health. All right. Thank my daughter. What am I thanking my daughter for, Heather? For let's see. Okay, let's see. Trauma says I did and I shared first time here, and all I have to say is wow. Appreciate you being here. I thank my daughter for bringing these wonderful friends here. You know, and of course we've got Trauma Raised Me here and contributing a lot of really great thoughts to the chat. So appreciate you, friend. Agreed. Collagen and MSM together. Take them in the AM and my tea. My out of sec 12th Mars wrecked my joints. Yeah, I persevere. Yeah, knees are a problem for me. My 6th house is Capricorn as a Leo rising. And oftentimes the 6th house can show us where we might potentially have injuries. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I've had a ACL reconstruction and I've already had 1 cartilage reconstruction in my other knee. And this injury is in the knee that is not surgically repaired. So I'm praying that I didn't mess up some cartilage or a ligament. And I don't think I did, but it's been about a week and it's still a little funky. Turmeric for inflammation. Yes, that's a good call. Marcia Lindsay is here. Says, really enjoying our talk today and learning, Spencer. Oh, doing cat-cow yoga move. Good. Nice. I love it. I'll have to do some more yoga too. I've been doing some Tai Chi movements, but I need to incorporate more of this into my daily routine. And maybe when Tanya's, here in the house every day, we could collaborate on some exercise routines. I think that might be a fun part of this. I am sort of looking forward to having Tanya at home, despite some of the challenging circumstances that have brought that to fruition. But sometimes we can make the best of those changes, and there's some collateral benefits, right? Collateral benefits rather than damage. I like that. What are some collateral benefits to our difficult situation? Heather says she advertised for you and your beautiful wife. Oh, nice, Heather. Thank you. Thank you, Sophie, for putting out amplifying our signal. Sophie is doing some great work with Sag Moon Magic and really carrying on the legacy of both myself and my partner. She's doing some astrological and tarot stuff. She's doing some magical practice stuff that she learned not only from me, but mostly from Tanya. And I love seeing those traditions being carried out in the world. And she's very gregarious. She's a Capricorn Leo rising, and she has Mars and Aries. It's Sag Moon, so I can't even keep up with her. So I'm happy that she's helping to amplify our signal, and please go support her on her channels. All right. Yes, we've got someone who's active while doing the chat. I love it. Moana says that she's here because my daughter too. Oh, excellent. Excellent, friend. I love it. I love that I hope one thing that I'm super excited about that my daughter's helping with is helping us to connect with cross-generationally. I think that my partner and I are kind of on the Gen X millennial like sort of borderline. I'm a 1980 and she's a 77. And I've seen a lot of Gen Z come in and contribute their perspective, which I think is extremely valuable. So thank you so much for the young people that are stopping in and contributing to the chat. It's really important to hear your perspective on the world and to help all of you start to build your own legacies. And I'm seeing my daughter do that, but I hope that more of you are learning from this and taking it out into your worlds and teaching us too, like helping us to learn. My daughter's been helping a lot to help us make the adjustments necessary to the current needs of this world. And just have patience with us old heads. Like we're trying. It'll happen to you. There'll be something that you're like, I don't know if I could change to this thing. But it's so cyclical. Yeah, exennials, Ani says. Yeah. Yep. Trauma's an exennial. Okay, good. We've got the millennials and exennials here. I love it. So all the generations, we're all just humans, And like I said, I love connecting cross-generationally and globally. That's what I love this channel to be, is a place for people around the world to connect with one another. And my Pluto and Libra energy is coming out, trying to be a harmonizer and a peacemaker for all of it. Oh, Heather's Gen X all the way. I love it. Well, Heather, I can tell from your profile picture, you look very young in the profile picture. So good job on that, friend. But all right. So thank you, friends, for liking, subscribing, turning on the notification bell. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. Make sure you're checking out the sales for not only for my webinar store at spencermichaud.com, but also at Third Coast Mojo, 50% off all the webinars that I have for sale over there. Just to kind of plug, we could use the support right now to give us a soft landing in the transition into maybe more self-directed employment. And then Third Coast Mojo, 25% off right now. Make great Christmas gifts. So thank you for supporting everyone there. Okay, let's get back to it. What do you say? Okay. Juana, 29. My goodness, all of you look so young. So we may have a millennial crowd in here today too. I love it. All right, so back to our Astrology of December. Here is the 10th. Let's go forward to the 10th. And December the 10th, Neptune stations direct. Simultaneously, Mercury opposes Uranus retrograde. We just experienced Mercury opposing Uranus this week as I'm recording this, retrograde. So I believe it was like Wednesday or Thursday, maybe moving into Friday. I'd have to think about when that was exactly. Let me look it up just to be accurate. So the Mercury opposition with Uranus was the 19th of November. So that was Wednesday. So if you had some communication that came in that was like, oh shit, what was that all about? It was kind of a shock to the system. This is a day where you may be revisiting these topics from the direct perspective rather than the retrograde reflective perspective. And to me, it's fascinating when these things happen simultaneously, because the shock of awareness that you might be experiencing this week could lead to some new ideas that come with Neptune stations direct, right? So really pay attention and try to connect with, if you're listening to this after the fact, November 19th and 20th to December 10th, right? When we see the same aspect forming, but from the direct motion. We talked a little bit about Neptune stationing direct earlier, as far as just getting clear with your vision, preparing for Neptune to move into Aries, which is a pretty big movement in January, and really trying to understand the shift from an environment where we may be dissolving boundaries between one another with Neptune and Pisces to a place where, or glamorizing that and glorifying it. Like Neptune brings glamours, to where an environment where we may start glamorizing radical independence, individualism, things of that nature. We have to be real careful of that moving forward, but maybe risk taking as well. So this might help prepare us for that potentially. Let's see. Zennials are closer to Gen Z. Xennials are closer to Gen X. They're both pronounced the same. It can be confusing. Zennials and Xennials. So many demarcations. You know what I like to differentiate between generations? I often look at Pluto generations. And I'm a Pluto Libra. And, we've got a lot of people in the chat that are Pluto Scorpios and Pluto Sagittarius. Pluto has like a 20-ish year cycle, more or less. And I feel like there's a lot of unification in ways of thinking through Pluto generation cycles. So that might be just another alternate way to categorize it. Trauma says, oh my God, Spencer, I felt that. It was like an ultra lucid moment. It was exciting and scary because I'm also like, okay, what's coming? Yeah, it's a lot to process lately, isn't it, friend? Ani says, never heard Neptune associated with glamour specifically, but that hits for sure. Ani, I would highly recommend this book by Liz Green. It's called The Astrological Neptune and the Quest for Redemption. I've been reading this off and on over the last few weeks. I'm in the middle of reading Tolkien as well, Lord of the Rings. And one week I'll read Tolkien, the next week I'll read Neptune. And she does an excellent job of contextualizing that aspect of Neptune and the quest for dissolving into a unified vision, consciousness, but also glamorizing that to the point where it can lead to actions that are based on an illusion. And it really is a great way to think about Neptune, just this cosmic ocean of primordial life. Think about how water is a solvent, and that will help you understand Neptune. Like, it dissolves structures, but it also can be a great overwhelming force of creation. And I think that this is what we see with Saturn and Neptune coming together in Aries, is we're going to both be dissolving old structures of Saturn, but then birthing new ones, right? And Saturn-Neptune moments have been great moments of births of movements that are based on an ideal or idea becoming concretized into reality. Heather says, natal Pluto and Libra. Haven't delved into that yet. I would say that us Pluto and Libras, we are attempting to be peacemakers. We came up in a generation that probably had our parents fighting a lot or getting divorced. I went through about 5 divorces growing up, and oftentimes we're having to balance out many different perspectives. And sometimes we were the peacemaker in the family, and that can feel like a burden sometimes. But I think at core, we want to see multiple perspectives, and we want to find harmony and equilibrium. And we have to, I don't know if we're the most aggressive generation, but I do think that our time is coming to be the voice of balance and reason. And I think that we have to step up and speak towards that when we see things going to extremes in our world right now, and find harmonious solutions. Ani says, I glamorized the potential of my networks with Neptune in the 11th and Saturn in Pisces. It was really hard reality check. P.S. I have Mercury in Pisces falling for sure. Yeah, great example, right? Neptune in our charts can be a place where we idealize something, right? It can also be where we tap into a sort of collective energy as well. I have Neptune in the 5th house. And when I was doing more art publicly, like I would tap into some sort of kind of vein of collective consciousness, and that would come through my art. Maybe it'll happen again. Moana says, link to ideal and phantasma aspect of Neptune, maybe. Absolutely. Amen. Spot on, Heather says. The conjunction of Saturn and Neptune will be on my natal Venus. Looking forward to the shift, even if it's disruptive. Yeah, Heather says revolution is coming. Yeah, I hope so, honestly. I hope it's peaceful, but I hope that there's change nonetheless, because the society that we're living in right now is very unfair. And maybe as Pluto Librans, we have a mission to restore balance and fairness to our societies. And just by speaking up towards justice is going to be important for us. Okay, so going towards the 11th here, we have Venus going through the bending of the nodes period. So I talked about the sun going through that same bending of the nodes, and now we have Venus going through that same period. Okay. So what Venus is doing here now, here's how you can differentiate between these things. All of the main discussion points remain with this Venus at the south bending, with an additional set of caveats. First of all, just to review, when a planet is at the south bending of the nodes, it's sort of at the bottom of the pit of letting go, right? It's at the peak, or the nadir, I guess what you would call it, the nadir of release. And here we're releasing our attachment to form, and we're starting the ascent towards increase. But to do so, we have to lean into Piscean themes of figuring out our why. Now, the way that you can differentiate between the sun and Venus in this journey is by understanding, first of all, what do the sun and Venus represent, and what houses are they responsible for? The sun is a point of consciousness. It's a point of light, where we are shining our individual perspective. So our individuality may have to go through a transition point. We may have to change forms as to how we present ourselves and our identities, how we manage our authority, right? Authority is associated with the sun. We may have to change our spirit, right? I don't know how you change your spirit, but we may have to have a different set of belief systems with the sun. Venus is a little bit different. Venus is a harmonizing planet that helps us to understand our desires. It helps us to understand how we attract, but also how we repel. Okay, so Venus is going through this transition, and Venus is bringing its significations to Taurus and to Libra. Okay, so we're going to have to start seeing those topics. I know this is a lot of things on the screen right now, but Venus is going to be providing for those topics. So this is a very arbitrary Cancer rising chart, but I'll demonstrate one rising sign for you. Venus is in the 6th house of a Cancer rising chart, at the bending of the nodes between the 9th and the 3rd house. A Cancer rising may be going through some changes with their body, specifically through an injury or an illness, or through something that is outside of their control, maybe with daily habits and routines. They may be moving away from a habit or a routine that has just been on autopilot, right? Maybe there's some habit that you go through with your daily routines, with your neighbors, with your everyday experience, but it's not serving you. It's leading to a negative health outcome. And with these planets going through this transition, you're moving more towards shifting your belief system so that you can have a better outcome with your health. And this is also going to affect, so that's Venus in the 6th at the bending of the nodes in the 3rd and the 9th house. But what Venus is also going to affect through this change is your 4th house of Libra, which is related to your home and your family, your domestic situation, and your 11th house, Taurus, which is related to groups that you share belief systems with, people that are helpful to you publicly, etc. So by you changing your daily habits and routines, you can lead to more effective friendships, 11th house. You might find a sense of purpose with a group that you're a part of. You may also find a new relationship with your family, with your roots, with your home, with your living situation. So it's really important as an astrologer to see how things are interconnected like a web, and which of these planets is connecting and trying to provide for all of these other situations in life. So that's a little mini tutorial on how a traditional astrologer would make those connections within a chart. Let's see. Trauma says, okay, I've always had this one question. Do you think MK Ultra can alter someone's fate from the stars? I have stories. MK Ultra. I don't know. Remind me what that is. It just sounds like something out of the Avengers. I know that's something I probably should know what it is, and once you describe it to me, it'll make more sense. But I'm not sure anything has the ability to alter someone's fate from the stars permanently. I think that there are certain things that we can do to create some better outcomes through pronoia. I think astrological magic sometimes can help nudge fate in a certain direction. But there are certain things that are fated that are not going to be changed by anything. That's called hemermene. There are different types of fate in the Greek tradition. Hemermene is the fate that is immutable. The two parents that you were born to is an immutable thing. You will always have come out of one particular person. That is a fate that is hemermene. But there are certain things that you can change. Hemermene. Pronoia is what we can change through our foresight. There's another type of fate called a nanke, which translates to being compelled, but sort of compelled in this ignorance way. And oftentimes before we start to learn things like astrology, we live out our charts in a nanke, in ignorance. We live out all the themes because we are beholden to them without any knowledge that it's happening. So yeah, I think that there are ways to shift things, but there are certain things that are immutable. Ani says, Austin Coppock associates Pluto and Libra, aka exennials, with the peacemakers and diplomats to bridge other generations that are disconnected. I love it. Yeah, I think that's what we're doing here. And as Pluto and Libras, we were the generation that grew up pre-digital and then had to learn that technology in real time. So I remember what it was like not to just have my face in a phone all day long. I remember what it was like before even a personal computer. And I also know what it was like to learn how to have to use that technology every day through my teenage and early 20s. So yeah, bridge generation, I think that's really appropriate. And I agree with Austin, and there's a lot of things that he and I share as, I guess, observations or maybe even some, I don't know if values is the right word, but I think we're part of a similar generational influence. Heather says, revolution is never peaceful, but we can help. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think that there's a part of me that's a little bit naively innocent, thinking that we can have like the Star Trek version of revolution where everybody just gets along and we can move forward peacefully. But there are definitely things that are being shown to me just throughout studying history and then seeing those themes repeat, that there are going to be some real challenging things that are going to happen as we move forward. But again, as the bridge builders, how do we facilitate that in a way that is as, I guess, functional? I don't know if peaceful is the right way, but functional. Yeah, we shall see. Feeling hopeful. Ani says, Jupiter, Saturn in conjunction in Libra, people might be leaders of this charge. No pressure. Yeah, well, it's not me. I missed that by about a year. But if you're born in like 81 to 82, you got your work cut out for you. Like I'm just here to analyze all the details with Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Virgo. Let's see. Trauma says, well, now my Libra ass needs a natal reading. I'd be happy to work with you. If you want to reach out for a reading, my books are open right now. I love working with people that I meet on the channel, and I put the same amount of attention to detail into everybody's chart individually as I do into these broadcasts. So I take this job very seriously, and I try to give you very detailed analysis, but also very practical advice as to how to move forward. And I do that all in, I think, a gentle but somewhat parental way, I guess. I think I'm like astro dad is the word that's sort of come out a little bit sometimes. I'm literally an astro dad with like Sophie, where you came to me from. But I try to be gentle and kind, but also have good boundaries and help you to have good boundaries and accountability, I guess you could say. Gentle accountability. I think that's the how you could describe my readings. An accountability partner that will try to help you to understand your patterns and maybe how to move forward most effectively, but also not to shy away from some of the difficult topics in life. I'm not afraid of diving into the depths of some of the trauma that raised you and helping you work through that too. I'm not a counselor or a therapist, and I think that it's important to seek those professionals out. But there is some element of, I just think, empathy within our reading structure. And I will never, one promise I make to my reading clients is I will never attempt to open some kind of wound without a turnaround or without holding a safe space and container for that. And if we do that, I will hopefully direct you in the proper direction to get the support that you need. Ani says, oh, MK Ultra is a CIA brainwash project. Yeah, I don't think the CIA is more powerful than astrology. So no, I think the answer would be no to that. Let's see. Yeah, mind control. It's still, all of those organizations are still subject to the planets. Anything on this planet is not more powerful than the celestial sphere symphony. Okay, so right, yeah. Thank God my high school days weren't digitized. Amen to that, Heather. I remember that abacus, honey says. It's funny. Oh boy, these are great reflections, friends. Okay. Yes, warrior aspiring as a diplomat, Ani says. Love it. All right. So Venus at the bending of the South Node, our tastes are changing, and we are moving towards accepting imperfections. We're moving towards increasing our faith and releasing some of our skepticism so that we can just take the leap. We're gonna need to take the leap, friends, into new realities. And that's going to take a little bit of faith. I think a lot of the Piscean elements are being able to visualize something that hasn't materialized into form yet. And that can be very scary. But the first step is to be able to see it in your mind's eye. And this is going to be important for all these planets. Yeah, appreciate you. All right, so Mercury is going to trine Neptune that same day. The 11th of December is a really big day. There's multiple things happening at the same time on December 11th. So we have Venus at the bending of the nodes. We have Mercury trining. Neptune, and also that's our first quarter. Our last quarter moon, and Mercury moving into Sagittarius. Now those two parts don't happen until the Sun has moved into Sagittarius 3. So I'll split those two things up. Venus is at the south bending of the nodes while the Sun's still in Sagittarius 2. Mercury trines Neptune. So Mercury is going to be, at the final degrees of Scorpio trining Neptune, really closing the loop on some of the November astrology that was really encouraging us to get really clear about the forms in our life that need to be composted. So this is going to be one of the final, I think, aspects from the grand water trines to tie up those loose ends and start moving forward. So that brings us to Sagittarius 3. So I'm going to take a little diversion here and just show you what Sagittarius 3 is all about before we dive into that astrology. And when I do that, let's take another stretch. All right, let's take another stretch. We've been going for a couple hours, which is awesome. You all have been having a great conversation here, not only with me, but with each other. I love facilitating that community. So do me a huge favor before we dive into Sag 3, like the video, subscribe to the channel, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't yet. That's really helpful. I think signing up for creators' newsletters is an act of rebellion and revolution in and of itself, resistance, because what you're doing is you are connecting with that creator outside of the corporate structure that you may have found them through, like YouTube, like Facebook, like Instagram, like TikTok. because at any point those big corporate entities could change. That they could change their algorithms. They could go out of business. They could change their the way that they present material to people. And by signing up for a content creator's email list, you have a way of connecting with them that's completely outside of all of that. And it's really important, and it's really valuable, and it helps us to have a more, I think, authentic relationship where we don't necessarily have to capitulate to the oligarchs. So if that resonates with you, sign up for the email list. And if you want to help us keep the lights on here, you can always go to buymecoffee.com or do a super chat today. That's always appreciated. We've had a couple of really generous people already today. So thank you so much for those of you who have been able to donate. Ani says, signing up notified me of the live stream. Otherwise, I would have missed you today. There you go. I always send out a reminder when we're going live too. So I don't try to over inundate your email box. I send out one email for the week, and then I send out one reminder when we're going live, and that's it. So you won't get an email like 3 times a day from me. There's probably 2 or maybe 3 max if there's something special coming out. Signing up for the email list now. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, friend. Appreciate you. Okay. So let's get back to it. Let's share our screen once again. And let's talk about Sag 3. Let's bring Sagittarius 3 here. Never capitulate. There you go. Love that word. Yeah, I'm an English major, so hopefully we will keep words like that alive, right? Let's see. Sorry, that's not what I want. So Sagittarius 3, December 11th through December 21st, through the winter solstice. So one thing that we see here is the 10 of Wands. The last decan of all the mutable signs see a transitory period, a transition of one season into another. So this is the last decan of fall before we come to the winter. And it is also the last decan of the sun's journey of decrease in declination. And that's a fancy way of saying that's the last day that is going to be getting shorter rather than with the light increasing, okay? When the sun starts to rise higher in the sky, the days get longer. When it rises lower in the sky, the days are shorter. It's all geometry, right? And we really feel this in Sagittarius 3 because we're trying to get to the end. We're trying to get to that return of the light. One thing that I think is a disservice to Sagittarians, especially that have placements in this decan, is that they are the happy-go-lucky people of the zodiac, living with a partner who has Sagittarius 3 as her sun. They can be that, but that's not always the case. What I have noticed with a lot of clients and personal relationships with people in this decan, they carry the weight of responsibility very seriously. This is a Saturn-ruled decan in the Jupiter-ruled sign. Yes, they have faith. Yes, they can be funny. Yes, they can be inspiring. But when it really comes down to it, these folks are ones that will try to carry not only their own burdens, but yours too. And sometimes they do that to their own detriment. They oftentimes, people with placements in this decan tend to be physically very, very strong. My partner's a good example of this. She's really strong. She has like an otherworldly physical strength. But sometimes she will do too much with it, and her body will get completely exhausted, right? This is the decan of pushing yourself to complete exhaustion. This is why Austin Coppock calls it a horse's skull, because we're pushing the body to its very limits. That spirit I talked about earlier, Ananke, is the force that compels us. These folks have an energy of like being compelled to do it. It's like they just can't not do things. They can't stop. A lot of clients I work with Sagittarius 3 placements, a lot of the talk that we have in true Pluto and Libra fashion is how do we find balance to that energy? How do we delegate? How do we put down some of those sticks so that we don't completely collapse with burnout and exhaustion? Because the Book of Tea and the Book of Thoth call this the Lord of Oppression, right? This is where we need to learn how to ask for help. So this decan, think about this culturally. In the United States or in Western civilization, whether it's Canada, Europe, wherever people are listening, Australia, maybe not Australia, I don't know. This is a time of year where it's leading up to the holiday, right? To the holiday season. People are rushing around. They're feeling the pressure of creating a memorable holiday experience for themselves and their family in a lot of situations. You're having to go do shopping, last minute shop. This is the late stage capitalism version of it. You're like, I got to go to a million stores. I got to rush around, and you're just so fucking exhausted with all the noise and the lights. And I gotta admit, friends, I opted out of all that a number of years ago. The pandemic gave me a huge excuse to be like, I'm opting out of all that. I never liked that in the first place. I'm just not going to do it. Like I will exchange gifts sometimes, but the whole like trying to maintain this 1950s America version of some holiday ideal is just fuck that. So I'm giving you all permission to be like, hey, maybe we do something simpler. Maybe we don't have to live up to some ideal that never really existed on some level. So Sagittarius 3, you may be compelled to push yourself beyond your limits. You may be compelled to get to that finish line, to get to that place where you feel like you can finally rest. So take it easy during Sagittarius 3. Yes, there are certain things that you may have to do that are non-negotiable, but it's okay to delegate some of that every once in a while. It's okay to put down some of these sticks. It's okay to rest. It's okay to recharge your battery and recharge your body. You don't have to push yourself to the very nth degree. This decan, I think, also is very similar to the third decan of Leo. For those of you who have Leo 3 placements, and I say we because my ascending degrees here, sometimes we push our bodies to the very limits too. I know I used to do this as a young person. I was very competitive in the world of sports, and this is the reason I had a number of injuries. Is my will was so strong that sometimes my body couldn't handle the force of my will. And I think similarly, Sagittarius 3 has some similar outcomes. The force of our will cannot always handle, the body cannot always handle that will. All right. Yay, wordsmith. Love it. Can't deal with that Sag Sun energy. Oh, takes too much patience. No, Heather, come on, you can do it. Oh, man. Ani says, so Neptune in Sag 3 is never giving up on your dreams, asking for a friend. Yeah, I have Neptune here at 20 degrees. I would say that, oh man, I'd have to reflect on that, Ani. That might be a much longer conversation. But the ping of realization is coming through that. I'm very, very stubborn about pursuing a dream. And I've carried out my vision much, much longer than a lot of people that I know, very stubbornly, and sometimes to my own detriment. So yes, carrying out your ethical vision and dream, even to the point of like injuring yourself. I mean, if I'm going to be real with all of you here, this channel is sort of that. Moving forward, I'm going to have to figure out new ways to monetize the channel if I'm going to keep doing this. And not because I don't want to keep it free for everyone here, which I will do some of that. But there's just necessity as like making it that I'm going to have to change some things. And there's a huge part of me that doesn't want to at all. So that Neptune and Sag 3 thing, that's real. Like we want to stay true to our ideals, even to the point of falling on the sword for them. So be careful about that if you have that placement, or if you're doing anything in that regard. But yeah, if you have some ideas about how we can keep going and be true to our ethics of making our information available to the most amount of people, even if they have different circumstances, I'd be open to it if you have ideas, because this is part of my journey like through this is how do I stay true to myself. And part of what I think is that information should be available to everybody, and not just people who can afford it. I feel a lot of connection with people who are struggling in the world, either financially or with mental or physical or emotional health. And I want this to be a safe place and a point of light and a beacon of light for them too, not just the wealthy. So yeah, we'll have to figure that out together. Ani says, I used to work at a mall. Opt out of all consumerism, please, friends. Don't feed the machine. Easy to think about, sometimes hard to do, but I appreciate the sentiment and I agree with it. Marietta is here. Hey, Spencer. It's Trauma raised me from YouTube. There you go, Marietta. Perfect. Now you're coming in from a different channel. I love it. I love knowing your names too, friends. If you have a weird screen name, let me know your name, because I love being able to personalize that interaction. If you're comfortable, you don't have to share if you're not comfortable, but it's nice to be able to address you as a human and not as a screen name sometimes. Okay. Friends, great. Charades? Oh, okay, hold on a second. Sharzad? Is that your name? Sharzad? Sharzad? If I'm butchering that, I apologize 100%. But I love being able to know your name. I love that. Sharzad? I joined a live stream group for a modest fee and giving super chats. There you go. Perfect. I love these ideas. Moana here. Nice. Sharzad. Good. I got it. Yeah. Always correct me if I'm saying something incorrectly. As a Venus and Gemini, I want to get that right. Appreciate you. Thank you, friends. All right. Good ideas. Let's keep going. So let's talk about what we might be experiencing with this Sagittarius 3 kind of thing. Okay. So with Sagittarius 3, the first kind of thing that we're getting into here, good pronunciation, good, I'm getting it. Last quarter moon, okay? We're still on December the 11th, but we've switched over to the third decan of Sagittarius. So this is all happening within the same day. Venus bending the nodes, Mercury trine Neptunes, the sun moving into Sagittarius 3 decan, and then we have the last quarter moon perfecting. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, but we have the Sagittarius sun with all of the themes that I just described, the compelling towards the finish line, the pushing ourselves to the very limits of our physical capabilities. All of that is coming into a square with the moon in the decan of Virgo that is really associated with passing on a legacy, completing a physical process. There may be something around the 11th where we're like, we're just trying to finish this project. We're just trying to close out the details. I know I've been very upfront about our situation here. This is going to be the second to last day of my partner and her job. So she's going to be closing out all of the things before moving on to the next, whatever the next experience is, that she's closing that door and opening the new window. And there may be some challenges around that. There's always some details that we have to deal with that may be challenging. What I would say that Sagittarius's strength is seeing the big picture. Virgo's strength is maybe seeing things up close and the small details. So if you think about that, you may have to balance out seeing the big picture and dealing with the details. And sometimes those things conflict with one another. My rule of thumb that I've taken from an author like Austin Coppock is that when we have waxing moon phases, like first quarter moons, you want to increase that quality that the decan is in. So if this was a first quarter moon, we would increase our attention to detail. Waning moons, like last quarter moons, disseminating moons, balsamic moons, we would probably tend to decrease those significations to get to where we're going. So in this case, maybe we need to decrease our attachment to details to see the bigger picture right? We need to maybe release some of the microcosm so that we can get the bigger thing done, right? That would be my advice here. Yeah, I agree. It is a beautiful name, Moana. Sharzad, it's a beautiful name. Okay, the last thing that happens on December the 11th, Mercury moves into Sagittarius. So Mercury is going to move back into its exile out of Scorpio, ending the grand water trines. So this is where we're kind of getting the end of that letting go process, the end of the composting process, and we're really going to start feeling an impulse towards speed, towards moving forward quickly. Mercury in Sagittarius, it's in its exile because generally Mercury is a planet that functions well by asking questions, paying attention to the details, splitting things into categories, casting doubt, but sometimes healthy doubt, sometimes sacred doubt. In Sagittarius, we may be more apt to make declarative statements when the situation may call for asking questions. Mercury does have decanic dignity in the first decan of Sagittarius. So the real gift of this is communication that can ignite other people's enthusiasm. And that is something that you might really want to consider when Mercury moves into Sagittarius. Is what messages can you send out that will inspire people, and not necessarily messages that will create conflict with people. Sometimes with Mercury and Sagittarius, you can make these really declarative statements where for you to be right with a capital T, you have to make someone else wrong. And that to me is the real challenge with this. I think a better way of utilizing this energy with Mercury and Sagittarius is, what are you inspired about? And then if you're inspired about that, how can you leave some space for someone else to be inspired by something different? How can you allow them to be just as enthusiastic or inspired about what they're doing, as long as it's not harming somebody, right? That's the caveat, right? And this is not always easy. So how can you put your message out there in a way that is fiery and contagious as far as enthusiasm goes? Because in this decan, there's a spirit called Loimos. Loimos was the god of plagues. And really what I take from that is that we have this virus, right? We have this virus of an idea sometimes. Sometimes it's literal viruses. Sometimes Sagittarius 1, we see an explosion of literal like plagues. But metaphorically, we're trying to spread an idea. We're trying to spread a belief system. And there are ways to do that where we're not doing harm to others. That moves us to the 14th of December. And we have our second square with a Pisces planet. So this is Mars squared Neptune. And here's Mars at 29 degrees of Sagittarius, squaring Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. And this is really an aspect that's going to repeat for it. We saw it happen. We're going to see it happen with Mars. We're going to see it happen with the Sun and with Venus and with Mercury. All of these planets are going to square Saturn and Neptune before they move into Capricorn. So we're going to have this contact with the planet of glamorization, this planet of illusion, this planet of sacrifice and surrender to something bigger than us, to the primordial ocean of consciousness, to the solvent energy. And all of that happens before these planets move into a much more practical sign. So you may have to come in contact with your vision before you can take action on it. You may also, with the square, you may feel a little bit like you are being dissolved by a force greater than yourself. One of the things that I've learned with Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, those outer planets, they're very social. And I mean that as far as like forces that are bigger than just the individual. So that you may have to face forces that are bigger than you as an individual before you can start making physical, practical plans moving forward. I have experienced Mars Neptune squares and Mars Neptune contacts. I really have experienced that as sort of these power outages. Think about what Mars represents: the ability to move forward, the ability to take action, and then think about the solvent action. Two images come to mind with Mars squared Neptune. One is like you're trying to swim and you're just running out of steam and you're just drowning in it. Like, the other thing that I could say is think about Mars in the ocean. What is Mars? What would be a manifestation of Mars in the ocean? The thing that comes to mind for me is like a shark. Like maybe there's some shark waiting for us in the depths that we can't necessarily see, but we have to be wary of. And it may consume us. It may just swim past us and not bother us. There's many different manifestations of that, but that could be some of the energy too, is that there's something in the water that's a little dangerous and we have to be very careful of it. It could be the waters of our own consciousness. Now that will bring us to the transition of Mars into Capricorn on the 15th. So here's Mars in Capricorn, and it is quite a change of dignity for Mars. So Mars is now moving into the domicile of Saturn, and instead of being in aversion to its host, Jupiter from Sagittarius, it's now sextiling its host. That's good news for Mars. First of all, our ability to sustain energy over time, I think, is increased with Mars moving into Capricorn. We also are able to do so in a practical way that takes into account our limitations. I'm not sure that Mars in Sagittarius 3 respects its physical limitations very well. I think Mars in Capricorn absolutely understands its physical limitations and paces itself in a way that's very strategic, that can lead to getting something done rather than burning out and collapsing from fatigue. So I think that's the good news with it. Now, this is the other interesting part about this. This Mars movement into Capricorn begins the malefic enclosure, right? Oh yeah, Ani says maybe a Marine Navy warfare. Entirely possible, Ani, like with the Neptune-Mars square. Unfortunately, that is a very real possibility that we've already seen play out with some of America's actions towards some Venezuelan ships and things like that. Like, just some crazy things for sure. And maybe that is something that would be highlighted or exacerbated during that Mars-Neptune square. I think you're right on with that. Another good example. But back to the Jupiter malefic enclosure. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. And so here's Mars, and here is Saturn. And it is making both of these planets now are on one side. So Mars is casting its ray on one side of Jupiter. Saturn is now casting this ray on the other side of Jupiter. And there aren't any of these Sagittarian planets that are intercepting any of these rays. Okay. So all three of these Sagittarius planets are in aversion to Jupiter. So they can't help, right? Sometimes we could say the moon might be able to do that, but it's such a temporary experience that I don't necessarily count that, right? So what does this mean for Jupiter? Well, let's take a look at the pressures it's facing. Number one, Mars is in Capricorn 1. Now, I will talk about Capricorn 1 in a second in detail with the flashcard to give you a visual. But the gist of Capricorn 1 is trying to make a new physical start, okay? Trying to plant your seed in a new place, sometimes a physical place. In my own situation, a new business venture, like with the composting of one employment situation, we have to plant our seed in a new employment situation. We're literally going to be putting action into whatever the new start is. Like maybe we'll put more energy into Third Coast Mojo. Maybe we'll put more energy into monetizing Spencer Michaud astrology in an ethical way. Maybe I'll start a Patreon. Maybe I'll start a YouTube membership program. Maybe I'll do more webinars. Maybe we'll do things together. Maybe we'll have more guests on the show. I don't know. Those are the questions, though, that, like, from my perspective, I'm going to be asking in my situation. In your situation, is there a new start that you have to make, a physical one, a new seed that you need to plant after the letting go period? So that's the Mars part of it. You're going to be feeling a lot of energy towards making the new start and planting practical seeds. One of the things that happens with that is you weigh the pros and cons. This is a lot of the energy of Capricorn 1 is represented by the Two of Pentacles. And you can see the figure in the Two of Pentacles basically juggling those two. They're basically suns, because this is the return of the light. That's actually a lemniscat in that figure that shows us the path of the sun over the course of a solar year. So we may be weighing options. My beautiful daughter from Sag Moon Magic has Mercury in this decan, and one of her favorite pastimes as a young person, and probably to this day, is making pros and cons lists. And that's the energy of Capricorn 1, right? It's an energy of being able to weigh out whether a physical or idealistic situation is going to bear fruit moving forward, or if it's going to be a barren wasteland. So that's part of what Mars is putting pressure on Jupiter. Okay. And Ani says she's got some good ideas for us. Email me my thoughts. I would appreciate that, Ani. I always love hearing ideas for communal efforts for this. When we come up with things as a community, it can be so much more powerful and effective. Yeah, for a magical biz. I'm a motherfucking hustler. Better ask somebody. Ani, we need some hustle magic. I would say that that's something that is not a strength of both Tanya and I, is the hustle. I actually resist it quite a bit, but that's part of my journey, is to learn to accept that is part of what I will have to do to change, is learn to hustle a little bit more. And I would welcome any advice from all of you as far as ways to do it in ways that are still in alignment with the values that you've observed on this channel. And I think if you've been here long enough, you've observed a pattern from me, and I think you pretty much know what I'm about here. And I think I would welcome any advice in that regard. So thank you. So back to our Jupiter and malefic enclosure. December 15th through January 7th. And so we've outlined the Mars part of this. Now let's think about the Saturn part of this. What is Saturn asking us to do in Pisces 3? Saturn in Pisces 3 is asking us to get real about our vision. It's asking us to get real about our wild swings of emotion. It's asking us to get real about what we're willing to sacrifice for the dream, okay? So we have Mars asking us to weigh the pros and cons of a new start physically, materially. We have Saturn asking us to get realistic about what those new starts and those sacrifices will entail. It's also conjoining Neptune, so we still have to be realistic about it, and that may prove a little bit difficult. Now, why is that putting pressure on Jupiter? And what is Jupiter trying to achieve? First of all, Jupiter is retrograde, so we're reviewing all of the themes associated with Jupiter. Jupiter in Cancer 3 is trying to create abundance, okay, or understand what to do in a situation of scarcity or in a situation of surplus, and how to balance out scarcity and surplus in a way that does not harm others, okay? So the main theme in Cancer 3 is you've got a real dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. We have some people who have more than they need in Cancer 3. We have other people that are experiencing lack in Cancer 3. How do we balance those things out without hurting, without taking away from people? I have Mercury in this decan, so I think a lot about, this is part of my struggle, friends, with all the things I've been talking about. How do I create value and abundance without diminishing others? And it's something that's been really hard for me to find a good answer to, because I feel empathy for those of those of you out there who are struggling financially and with your not only with your physical financial health, but with emotional, mental health, things of that nature. I feel a lot of empathy for that. And the last thing I would want to do is put anybody in a worse situation for my own personal benefit. That is something I resist with every inch of my being. And it doesn't always make me a great business person. It doesn't make me a ruthless business person. But I think that there's a way, and Jupiter is going to show us that way to be able to create win-win situations. And I think that we're going to feel a lot of pressure from mid-December to early January to try to do that. And we may be experimenting with things that some of them may work, some of them may not. I'm trying to give you some warnings that I may experiment with some things on the channel. And some of those things may work, some of them may not. And know that there's a lot of reflection that goes into trying to figure out the win-win situations. And I hope in your life, when you're trying to deal with situations of scarcity or situations of abundance, that you will consider how to do that in a way, with actions in a way that will lead to win-win situations. So we might not have all of those answers at the beginning of January or the end of December. We may feel stuck. We may be experimenting with some of those things, okay? I say have faith in the process because we will figure this out. And I say that because there's such a powerful new start coming in January, early January, with the cazimi of Mars and Venus. And that's going to be super, super powerful for creating new material structures in our life. And I think it's going to help alleviate some of these challenges we feel with the malefic enclosure of Jupiter. So it will begin when Mars moves into Capricorn, but it will end, and this one has a clear ending date. This one will end when Venus conjoins Mars. When we make a plan with Mars in Capricorn, and it's in Capricorn 2. This is the decan associated with the 3 of Pentacles, where we're cooperating with others to build ornate structures. And we're combining this desire and harmonizing element with the action-orientated Mars. Really powerful. So just hang in there. If you're having some trouble figuring out how to create win-win situations, you will understand how to move forward in early January. The other thing that this could be a little bit difficult for is your Pisces and your Sagittarius areas of your chart, because Jupiter is providing for those areas. And you may have some difficulty, like in this very arbitrary Cancer rising chart, your 6th house and your 9th house could be affected. You could be struggling with your own sense of personal identity and how that works for your everyday life and for your belief system. All of those things are putting a lot of pressure on you. And you may be working through trying to find a new start with a partnership for Cancer rising, okay? All right. Ani says, I resist also, so only sell what I believe in. Yeah, it's tough. And in a world that is constantly shifting, I think, towards more and more, in my viewpoint, unethical things. And to me, my values are coming into alignment with the rhythms of nature, protecting the earth. And with things like artificial intelligence, all of those things are counterintuitive to those things. They speed everything up. They take advantage of vulnerable communities. They destroy the earth. And trying to work within that world is just really uncomfortable. And I'm not sure what the answer is. But as Trauma Raised Me says, well, let's see what was Trauma's name again here. I'm sorry, Trauma, I'm going back here. Marietta, as Marietta said, says, you stay awesome, Spencer. You have a stellar heart. Yeah, pay attention to your hearts, friends. Let your heart guide you. The practical things will work themselves out if you stay true to your values and your ideals. This is one thing I learned from watching and was inspired by watching James Garfield in Death by Lightning. He had a really strong obstacle in the senator from New York. I keep trying to remember his name, Roscoe Conklin. Conklin, piece of shit Conklin, who basically was running like a tariff operation on the ports of New York, and then stealing the money from the American public and hiding it, which was taxpayer money. And eventually, Garfield overcame Conklin's corruption through letting time pass, through allowing forces to change so that he was no longer in power. So he stayed true. Garfield stayed true to his values and was able to push through his appointments because the circumstance changed with Conklin stopping, blocking him. So that's the beautiful thing about astrology. Circumstances change. And sometimes when our best intentions are blocked, if we stay true to our values, the circumstances may change so that our values become more facilitated and in vogue and supported. So I really think that erring on the side of your heart is important. It's been a while since I looked at my birth chart, Marietta says. I forgot how much of a mess it is. Oh, we'll have to break it down together, friend. Mars and Libra, Venus and Scorpio. Boy, do I procrastinate. Oh, well, there's advantages to having some exiled planets, and we can discuss that in greater depth. Let's see. My goodness. I'll have to meditate on that one, Marietta. Ani says, I choose to use my gifts to be part of the solution instead of being complacent. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Good, those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. Yeah, I agree. So good advice from our community on how to deal with Jupiter and malefic enclosure. Your values, oftentimes related to Jupiter, our belief systems, could feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. They could be stuck between finding the right mixture of practicality and the dream and the vision that you're trying to hold tight to. But it's temporary. And that's another thing that astrology really helps us with, is understanding that this too shall pass. Okay, so let's move forward from that. On the 16th of December, Mercury is going to exit its retrograde shadow. And here we have Mercury at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And this is, like we talked about earlier in the broadcast, this is where Mercury is going to be starting to traverse new ground. So we may have some ideas that we aren't just revisiting, but we're actually getting some new material in our brains to explore. And that's very exciting. So pay attention to ideas that come up, because you might be starting to move forward with new communications. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's keep going. 16th. The other thing on the 16th, another thing on the 16th, as Mercury enters its retrograde shadow, another fun square with Saturn. So here's the Sun making the square with Saturn. So we just went through the Mars-Saturn square, which feels like 1 foot on the gas, 1 foot on the brakes. I think when the Sun squares Saturn, there is questions of visibility versus invisibility, the light and the darkness. I think the Sun is encouraging us to become visible, to state who we are and what we want to do. Saturn tends to cast things into darkness. It is the concept of darkness. It is feeling bound to physical reality, where the Sun is also represented with the spiritual consciousness. So we may be having some conflict or experiencing some challenges with trying to become, some kind of spiritual being, and running into the limitations of our physical reality with the Sun squaring Saturn. It's not about becoming a spiritual being. That's really not we are just that. But how do we embody those spiritual values in physical reality? And that could be part of the challenge here. We could also be having some challenges with some authority figures around this period of time. The Sun represents authority figures. Saturn represents some blockages and some challenges. So just be careful about running too hard into a brick wall or banging your head against that brick wall. Again, it's a temporary experience. All right. Yes. All good, friends. Square dancing. Yeah, that's a good one. We are going to be square dancing here. I love it. So that aspect, the Sun-Saturn square, now keep in mind with the Sun-Saturn square, these two energies are very opposing. If you look in the Thema Mundi, the natal chart of the world, the teaching tool of the metaphorical natal chart of the world, the Sun and Saturn are opposite energies in that chart. So the ability to individuate versus the necessity to be part of a community, it might be something that we're working through as well. And that brings us to the new moon in Sagittarius 3, 28 degrees Sagittarius. Let me bring this up. And let's take another little stretch. I should have brought a snack with me. We're getting close to hour 3. I'm starting to get hungry. So if my brain starts glitching, I apologize, but we'll get through it. We've still got some ground to cover in December here. But do me a huge favor. Stand up, stretch out, shake out the energy. If you're still hanging with me, you are amazing. I love that we have people that appreciate long form content. Do me a huge favor with just go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet. Share it with your friends. Tell your friends about Spencer Michaud Astrology. Sign up for the newsletter. Support Tanya at Third Coast Mojo. Go buy yourself some Venus and Taurus Peaceful Home. It's really good stuff. It's a new product that came out this week, and it's a beautiful Venus and Taurus election that is crafted in the traditional hoodoo conjure format. It's amazing, and it's like I said, it's been really helping us move through what has been kind of a difficult, challenging thing. Whenever people in relationship, when one person loses their livelihood, that can lead to a lot of conflict. But since we've been using Peaceful Home, we've just been really supportive of one another, and it's really smoothed out a really difficult experience. So I can vouch for it firsthand. Okay. Let's keep going here. Starting the grill. Oh, don't make me hungry. Don't make me hungry, Ani. I think we're making pizza tonight. We've decided, we have discovered how to make cast iron pan pizza, sort of like Pizza Hut from the 80s, if you're an 80s kid, 80s and early 90s, where you had your own personal pan pizza. We've been kind of making that on Fridays. It's really good, and it's amazing. I'm very blessed to live with a great chef. I have a lot of ideas about food, and then Tanya is really great at manifesting the vision. So I'm so blessed in that. Okay, so let's get back to this new moon in Sagittarius 3. And before I do that, friends, I need to take just like 30 seconds. All right. I gotta go use the little boys' room real quick here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this little banner here. Here is Peaceful Home. I'm gonna take off. I think I'm back. I'll be back in a minute. Talks amongst yourselves. Go visit Third Coast Mojo. I'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you for your patience with that, friends. This is going to make the last 30 or 40 minutes of this live stream much more enjoyable for me. 'Cause, oh man, we got to pay attention to our bodies, friends, and powering through for like 3 hours if you got to pee, like, is bad for your bladder. So thanks for your patience, friends. Oh my God, Ani's making lamb chops, Tony. That sounds amazing. I'm so hungry already. Appreciate that. Let's see. Thanks. Rawia is here. Says, thank you for reminders to stretch. Tanya's new offering sounds amazing. Nice. Hope you go check it out. Appreciate you. Thank you for your patience. You should have some of your music playing like a little bumper. That's a great idea, and I definitely should do that. I will try to figure that out. I've got a lot of good music out there, and hopefully writing some more. Thank you, friends. All right. Yes, for my kidneys. Okay. All right, back to it. Do it to it. So new moon in Sagittarius 3. Oh boy. So much better. Okay. Let's talk about this new moon. So all of the themes that apply to Sagittarius 3 apply here. So I'm not going to rehash all of that, but if you are listening to this piecemeal as you go along, this is a new moon in the decan where we are compelled to finish something. We're compelled to get to the finish line, the end of the year. A lot of times people are doing their taxes around this period of time, figuring out if they need to close any loops for the end of the calendar year. Like, all of these things come into play. This new moon is going to be co-present with Mars. It's going to be hosted by, well, this is the wrong, what the hell? Sorry. This is from 2023. What the fuck? What a day we're having here. Here we go. There it is. I just pulled up the wrong one. Boy, oh boy. That's funny. Well, that is actually interesting because I went back and I looked at the previous new moon in Scorpio 3 in 2023. These new moons tend to repeat every couple years in the same decans. So going back to the 2023 new moon in Sagittarius 3 can give you some insight into some of the themes that you might be experiencing in the new moon in 2025. So this new moon is going to be at 28 degrees Sagittarius. It is going to be co-present with Venus and Mercury, which honestly is kind of much better news than it being co-present with Mars, in my opinion. We've got a much better Mars in this chart with its exaltation in Capricorn. You've got Venus smoothing out the process, okay? Even though it is under the beams and getting ready for renewal, having it co-present can, I think, be helpful. It's going to be hosted by Jupiter in Cancer 3 retrograde. So that is a little bit challenging. I would say that the only issue I have with this new moon, just looking at it as a whole, the host of the new moon is going to be in that malefic enclosure that we just were talking about. So we may really still be feeling some of the pressure, excuse me, of the Mars and the Saturn types of individual experiences with Mars encouraging us. We'll get there. Encouraging us to make a new start, and then Saturn bringing us an awareness of where we are sacrificing for that dream. What else with this new moon? I would say that the square to Saturn really stands out to me. When we're trying to make a new start, we are feeling compelled to move, to finish, to get towards the finish line, but there are obstacles in the path with the Saturn-Neptune square. So just be careful about burning yourself out emotionally, spiritually at this new moon. This one is going to get us into the new year. And then I think the next new moon that we have after this, our full moon, the full moon that we have is in Cancer. So we have a Cancer full moon for this cycle on January the 3rd. So that might be when we start to feel a little bit of the pressure starting to alleviate. And then the malefic enclosure is done on the 7th. So we will talk about this new moon in greater depth in a full live stream. So make sure you tune in for that. Sign up for the newsletter, notifications, etc. So here we have on the 20th. The 20th is another day where we have a couple things happening at the same time. There we go. Where are we at here? All right. So here is the 20th of December. And now, just if you're disorientated, now it's a Leo rising chart, just randomly. But now we have Mercury at the bending of the nodes. Okay. So Mercury is at about 11 or 12 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's going through its own transition period, moving away from the south node, the point of release, and towards the point of increase, the north node. So the differentiation that you would feel with this versus the other bending of the nodes is that you want to really look at your Gemini and Virgo areas of your chart. So the Gemini and Virgo areas of your chart are going to be affected by this bending of the nodes. In this arbitrary Leo rising chart, we have Virgo as the second house and Gemini as the 11th house. So for example, there may be a transition from an individual way of supporting yourself towards a joint way of supporting yourself through your creativity, if you're a Leo rising, that will bring in your relationship to group consciousness with the 11th and the second house. So that is a way to analyze that. You're also going to see the sun squaring Neptune on the 20th. This is my partner's birthday, by the way, so make sure to wish Tanya happy birthday on December 20th. And this is a sun square with Neptune, where we just have to be kind of careful about how we view ourselves, right? How we view our roles out in the world. We might be really like being a little bit idealistic about what our roles are going to be moving forward. We may be getting emotional about the way that we present ourselves out into the world, about our visibility. We might be a little bit exhausted from trying to become more visible. I know that we have a lot of 12th house energy in this channel. I'm a 12th house sun and Mercury. My partner is a 12th house sun and Venus and Neptune. And we have a lot of 12th housers here. And one of the challenging things about being a 12th house sun is visibility is sometimes kind of painful. And I do my best here. I have the moon on the midheaven, so that helps in Taurus. But being visible every day can be really exhausting. And I think the Sun Neptune square, it feels a little bit similar to me to like maybe a 12th house sun, where we're just kind of getting worn out with being visible, especially in a period of time where we're at sort of peak darkness, right? This is right around the solstice, where we are really at the weakest point for the sun, as far as its declination goes. Maybe not necessarily weak as far as its dignity in the sky, but it's definitely, the light is kind of weak and it's ready for a return. So I guess just pace yourself on these days. Try not to force yourself into visibility if it's uncomfortable. I know that a lot of people who have online businesses feel a lot of pressure to be visible day after day after day. But I think there's ways to take breaks from it too, so that you're not just a slave to the algorithm. We try to do that here, but this is the other part of the reason I like long form content is I can be visible for like 3 hours a week, and then the other part of it I need to just like, okay, I gotta go hide again, you know. But mostly I'm working with clients and working with my classes and things like that. So how do you find the rhythm that works for you with visibility with the Sun square Neptune? Now, let's see. Ooh, we got all these Virgo. Yeah, definitely. The other thing that's happening on the 20th is our good friend Venus is going out of bounds. So remember at the beginning of the show, we talked about Venus sort of going into the out of bounds period with Mercury, Mars, and the moon, okay, with multiple moon out of bounds periods. Venus out of bounds, there is some interesting things with Venus out of bounds. I have found in just basic research of people that get involved in weird relationships, many of them have Venus out of bounds or Venus exiled and out of bounds. Think about like May December romances or things like that, like Harold and Maude or something like that, where it's a very unconventional relationship. Or you have some people that are married to someone from overseas, or it's a completely different culture. You have things like that happen just in relationships. Venus out of bounds in artists is really prominent. Think about a planet that's out of bounds is not necessarily beholden to the authority of the king. My favorite Venus out of bounds example for an artist is Bjork. So Bjork is like this pure, unadulterated Venusian energy that she's just very creative, but it's in this really unorthodox way. She just seems like she's a fountain of creative energy. And Venus is not necessarily having to play by the sun's rules. She makes her own rules on some level. So this can lead to some really interesting artistic expressions. Like Mare, if Mare's doing paintings during Venus out of bounds, maybe she doesn't do animals at this point. Maybe she does something completely different and she feels like a connection to that. This is just an example, Mare, if you're painting. I love the animal portraits, by the way. But maybe it's an invitation to try something new, to try something that we haven't done as artists or creatively. Maybe it's an invitation like Venus out of bounds to try a new restaurant or something like that, or a new recipe. I know that there's been times in the past where Venus was out of bounds and we went to a restaurant and I ordered something completely out of character. I generally tend to order the same thing when I go to places. I find something that I really like and then I'm like, I like that. I'll just keep getting that. That's a Taurus moon thing. But when Venus is out of bounds, you're like, you get experimental. You're like, let's try something new. And sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's terrible, but you never would have found the amazing thing if you didn't take a risk. So there could be some things like that. There's also, I've seen some really inappropriate types of relationship expressions with Venus out of bounds. You do see that in charts like Drake, for example, who's been accused of sort of being a groomer of sorts. So that's another thing to watch out for with Venus out of bounds, is getting involved in an inappropriate, socially inappropriate relationship. And sometimes when people have this natally, they don't have the sense of social acceptability when they're either doing art or doing relationships. And that can lead to some positive outcomes in Bjork's case, and it can lead to some negative outcomes in like Drake's case. So it's something to consider. Okay, let's see. Ani says, 12th house, Sun, Mars, Venus, life. Backstage promoting others was my old profession. Makeup artist as a Taurus rising. I can lead if I have to, but I'd rather not. Just blaze my own trail. I hear you. I don't mind being behind the scenes, but I just keep getting pulled into public life because the ruler of my moon, or the ruler of my 12th house is the moon, like conjoining the midheaven, like really, really powerful moon on the midheaven. So as much as I sometimes enjoy being visible, there's other times I do not want to be visible at all. And this was a real problem when I had to go perform music, like, because getting to the stage was really hard. Like there's a lot of anxiety around it. But once I was there, I just was completely in the moment. So that can be something to look at if you have 12th house energy, Ani, or others, is what's the ruler doing? And if the ruler is in really good shape, sometimes that can help mitigate some of the feelings of wanting to hide. Ani says, I need to check on declination. Never checked. Wouldn't be a shocker if Mars or Venus was out of bounds. Yeah, let me know. I would love to hear out of bounds stories. You have me all up in your chart, Spencer. Marietta. Yeah, I like to share through my examples. And I feel like I've experienced my chart. I like connecting lived experiences, and I can say with great certainty the things that I've experienced and the chart placements. And I hope that by me sharing my personal examples, it helps you to see how you can connect those with your own personal examples. And it's not really me trying to talk about myself too much. I'm sorry if it comes off that way. It really is trying to teach through experience. And those are the things I'm super sure of, is the things that I've gone through. And I hope that by being vulnerable about the things that I've experienced in my chart, it helps all of you be vulnerable about your charts in the chat as well. Yeah, he's a Scorpio. He has Venus in Scorpio too, Marietta. Time to work on those social spiritual boundaries, absolutely. Ani says, Moon midheaven, you're destined to lead a collective like this one. Yeah, I feel that, and I feel energy towards that, Ani, and I do enjoy this work. So I don't mind that. I feel if there's purpose behind it, it helps me be brave to come out of my cave and my shell. So yeah. Happy to be part of this collective and to have met you. Thank you, Marietta. Appreciate you, friend. Happy that you're here. I love it. Okay. So that's our Venus out of bounds, December 20th through January the 3rd. Now this kind of begins the Venus-Saturn square, begins the Saturn benefic enclosure. So check this out. This is pretty cool. I know that we talk about malefic enclosures and we get ourselves all worried about them. But what happens when we have a planet? Let's not even make this. Let's make it green because it's benefic. If you could see it, there's the green. And now we have Venus and Jupiter casting its ray. So here's Jupiter casting its ray on one side of Saturn. Here is Venus casting its ray on the other side of Saturn. So they are protecting Saturn, right? I don't think this is exactly the concept of Hellenistic spear bearer. I actually have a spear bearer in my chart too. Saturn is protecting that moon on the midheaven. But this is something where Venus and Jupiter are trying to help us move forward with our responsibilities. So I have a little bit of ambiguity about when this ends, but let's just talk about this in the same way we talked about the malefic enclosure. Now, here's one thing that I will say. There are people in the collective right now that are prominent figures that have a benefic enclosure of a shitty malefic. The president is one of them. He has Saturn in Cancer that is benefically enclosed by Jupiter and by Venus. Having a benefic enclosure of a malefic does not necessarily mean you're going to do good works. Sometimes what it can mean is that you can get away with doing terrible things, as he has famously said that he can get away with shooting someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. So be careful about that. Be careful about trying to get away with something that isn't in your best interest. Now, in that example, we have an exiled Saturn in the 12th house. So probably someone not acting with their best guardian angel. They're probably getting away with the kakos daimon, right? The bad spirit in the 12th house. And this a really funky Saturn there whispering in their ear to do terrible things, and they get away with it. Now, this Saturn, it might be in your 12th house if you are an Aries rising, so be careful of that, I guess. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that same energy. This could be a need to commit to a dream, commit to an ideal. And it may show you all the things that you need to do, and it may smooth the process out. So Venus in Sagittarius 3, I think will help you, give you the energy needed to take action on your dreams and to smooth out that process. Jupiter in Cancer 3 will help you to create win-win situations when you are responding to the necessity of following your dream, okay? And I think that this is interesting to me because I'm thinking about when this ends. And as we discussed earlier, let's see, it could possibly end. I'm going to move the chart a little bit forward here. It could possibly end with Mercury moving into the 22nd degree of Sagittarius, right here. Okay. Oh, actually, well, that's the second point. The first point, it could end on the 24th when Venus moves into Capricorn, because then Venus would be casting its ray on one side of Pisces But does it cross sign is the real question, because Venus would be casting its ray still on the other side of Saturn to Aries. I know this might be a complicated kind of experience, but check it out. Hopefully we're learning something. This is story time, right? Learning time. Venus is casting its ray, a square ray now, to the first degrees of Aries. And Jupiter is still casting its ray on the other side, okay? Now, the question becomes, can it cross sign? I'm not exactly sure. I didn't live in Hellenistic astrology times, and I've done some research, but there is always more to be done. The other possibility of when this could end, if we assume that Venus can still benefically enclose a cross sign, is when Mercury moves to 22 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, why is that? That is because now Mercury is moving in between and breaking up the benefic enclosure, because it is casting its ray to in between the ray of Jupiter and Saturn. Do you see how that works? So that it's possible that it ends with Venus moving into Capricorn. It's also possible that it ends with Venus, with Mercury moving into that degree of Sagittarius and breaking it up from that position. Okay, so two possibilities. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but think about that. Let me know if you feel a shift, either the 24th or the 27th. I'd love to hear follow-up on that, right? Don't cross the streams. Okay, let me check in with the chat here. Oh, appreciate you, friend. That's how the clown gets away with this shit. Ani says, yeah, it's that benefic enclosure of Saturn has been really helpful for his continued empowerment, even though he's done a lot of horrific things to a lot of people. But we'll see. There's always things that can eventually break it up. Certainly he is not good for us poor disabled people. No, sir. And another reason that I'm not in alignment with his worldview. I tend to try to champion people who are having challenges, and he doesn't give a shit. And that is very much out of alignment with what I believe in. Ani says, geez, those fixed stars is pretty much unstoppable until he goes too far, patiently waiting. We'll see. We'll see. There's some heat coming in the next few weeks for sure. But you know what I will say about all that, friends? When the macrocosm feels out of control, how do we try to take back our individual empowerment through, I don't know, through reflection, through being able to join up with others that we do agree with, to be able to support one another. I think that's the real key. I was going to go in a direction of like, how do we start reflecting internally? And I don't think that's really enough. I think that's part of it. I think that our own well-being does not necessarily have to be completely tied to the whims of oligarchs, but it would be naive to say that it isn't on some level. But I think those are the times when we need to join together like we're doing here today and have discussions about how we can support one another through challenging circumstances. So let's figure out how to do that. Yeah. Wonder if that's happened to Judas. Judas was born under Capricorn. Maybe he had a benefic enclosure. Definitely getting there. Basically called for the unaliving of Congress members. Yeah, all sorts of crap. I mean, I'm not surprised by anything the guy says anymore. So don't cross the streams, Marietta says. Yeah, that does look sort of like that, doesn't it? Another theory as to why the orange one got away with bad deeds, a traditional condition called a bodyguard. Technically, he'd need a Virgo rising, but 2959 Leo 1 might nudge it. Yeah, spear bearer. That's what I was referring to before. I actually have a spear bearer in my chart. Saturn is spear bearing my moon on the midheaven. And I would say that I don't know if I've gotten away with terrible things, but I've definitely had support in my life to do the things that I need to do, to like this. I would say the support of my partner has been invaluable. She's my spear bearer, you know? So It's interesting to me that as her condition changes, Saturn, the spear-bearing planet, is moving into its fall, into Aries. So I don't have the support of the same type of support from her that I would have had in the past to be able to do this type of work in the way that I'm doing it. So I will probably have to change some things because of that. And who knows where that will lead. But I think it's a really fascinating kind of technique to explore. If you're interested in learning about spear bearers, it's not super easy for me to explain on this this broadcast in the time that we have, but I would highly recommend looking at Demetra George's Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice, Volume 1 and 2. She has a whole chapter on spear bearers. And basically, it's a planet that has to meet a number of conditions for an exalted or a domicile planet that's conjoining one of the angles. And in my chart, it's the moon that's conjoining the midheaven in its exaltation that's protected by Saturn. So look it up in Demetra's book if you can. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Yes. Okay. The orange one. Okay, let's keep going. So the good news is that I think we have some protection for answering the call of responsibility if we're going to try to contextualize this. You probably have some support of your physical energy, maybe, with Venus moving through Sagittarius 3. There's Jupiter trying to help, even though it's retrograde, from Cancer 3, where we might have some really good ideas about how to increase our prosperity without diminishing others. Really important questions to ask with that moving forward. Okay. Now, this brings us to our final decan. Okay, we've got a few more things to go. I know we've gone really long today, but there's a lot of astrology in December. There was a bathroom break. There's been a lot of amazing discussion. Part of the reason we do long form here is we have just such an amazing community that is so active in the chat, that has all sorts of amazing insights, reflections, stories to tell. And one of the things that I love to do is to include you in that conversation. And if I've skipped over any of your comments today, I apologize. I trying to keep it within 4 hours. I have to pick and choose sometimes, but I do appreciate all of those comments. Keep them coming because it really does help the channel. And I do really enjoy hearing your perspective on these things. So thank you for being here and for participating. It really is a collaborative experience. So let's talk about Capricorn 1 a little bit, okay? Now here's the deck and flashcard for Capricorn 1. You can download these with the purchase of my webinars, which are on sale for 50% off at the store. You get the digital deck and flashcards along with it. Recordings, PDFs of the slides, it's all in there. So we're now we're moving from a Jupiter ruled sign to a Saturn ruled one. And this first decan of Capricorn is ruled by Jupiter as its face ruler. So a strange bedfellow as a ruler, right? Because Jupiter is in its fall in Capricorn. Book T calls it the Lord of Harmonious Change. Book of Thoth just calls it the Lord of Change. Austin Coppock calls it a headless body in 36 faces. And he talks about the descent of consciousness into a body. So the spirit here is Asclepius, and Asclepius was the ship surgeon on the Argo. So taking care of the body, taking care of our health so that we can do all of the things that is required of us. One thing that happens a lot in Capricorn 1, though, is the weighing of different possibilities. In the Decanic literature from both Austin Coppock and Susie Chang, two of the, I think, most prominent authors, or the ones that I've been exposed to. There's probably others. But they talk a lot about genus loci. And genus loci is the spirit of a place. So one of the beautiful skills that you might have if you have placements here is understanding the laws of the land, understanding what types of experiences you might go through in a new place. And that new place doesn't have to be a physical place. It can be a business. It can be a business place. It could be a new project. It can be a new, type of, I don't know, recipe that you want to create. It could be whatever, something physical. Can you tell I'm getting hungry? Because I'm like, maybe it's a new thing that you're going to eat. We're a little punchy today, friends. So usually I have a little bit more decorum, but there's something in the air today. Maybe it's a Sun Uranus opposition. Maybe it's just the planets moving into Sagittarius. I hope that you're having fun with me today, though. We're just kind of unfiltered. All right. Ani says, normally I have a 2-hour attention span, but I make exceptions for good talks. I'm trying my best. Great Asclepius, Skill to Heal Mankind. You have my attention. Makes my Orphic listed. Great reference there, Ani. That's an Orphic that I do every morning to pray for good health. So Sun in Capricorn 1, December the 21st to December the 30th. The winter solstice begins in Capricorn 1, the return of the light. Here we have the lemniscat, where we are sort of seeing the shifting of directions of the sun. And that shifting of directions is very literal, because now we see the sun starting to rise in relationship to the ecliptic rather than to fall. Okay. So we're seeing maybe a return of hope. I like to make New Year's resolutions in Capricorn 1. I think that at the winter solstice, I'm weighing all the new possibilities, and I'm starting to think about what I want to commit to for the next year ahead, right? Instead of just having it be on an arbitrary calendar date, you can come into alignment with the seasons and with the decans by doing so, making a list of what you want for you and what the pros and the cons of exploring any of those might be. So as we move forward with this, we'll bring our chart back up here. So here we have the Venus-Neptune square right before Venus moves into Capricorn. Remember, it's a pattern. Our pattern is that we are going to see these planets squaring Saturn and Neptune, and especially Neptune, before the planet moves into Capricorn. So we're got to go back in time a little bit here. Got to go back in time, right? Anybody go see Back to the Future in the theaters? Me and my partner went and saw Back to the Future in the theaters for its 40th anniversary not too long ago. It was amazing. I love that movie with all my heart. I just think it's an incredible, perfect piece of theater creativity. It hits all the right notes for a nostalgic cancer. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I love it. But I digress. So Venus is going to square Neptune in the final degrees of Sagittarius before ingressing into Capricorn. So now we're going to go through the same process we did with the Sun and with Mars, where we may be a little bit either tired or we may be a little bit idealistic Venusian wise, and then we get real practical. I think that just this time period is going to be just visioning and seeing what's possible, and then consolidating all those things into what is actually possible in the real world, manifesting wise. We're going to go through that with a lot of different things in our life with these squares, and then the movement into Capricorn. Okay. On Christmas Day, we do see Mercury moving under the sun's beams, which I always kind of takes me by surprise, because usually we've got all these under the beams, cazimi things, and then very shortly afterwards, when Mercury stations direct, it starts to move very quickly and then goes back under the beams much sooner than I anticipate, right? So here, Venus is going back under the beams here at 19 degrees of Sagittarius. And then it is going to, let me see, I have this in my notes here. It is going to cazimi on the 21st of January at 1 degree of Aquarius, and then emerge as the evening star at 7 degrees of Pisces, very near the North Node, on February the 11th. So this is Mercury taking to its sickbed, Mercury getting ready for another renewal. I would say another way to think about this is when Mercury is retrograde going under the beams, it's like Mercury in its psychopomp phase, visiting the underworld, visiting our past, visiting our own intuitive knowing to unearth something and to bring it to the light with the cazimi. When Mercury is going under the beams direct, it is more like Mercury visiting Olympus and getting a message from something outside of ourselves, like from the divine, from God, from, the universe, however you want to describe it, from Zeus, because Mercury was the messenger of Zeus, the leader of the gods of Olympus. So pay attention to things that come to you that aren't necessarily from your own intuition or ideals when Mercury is going under the beams direct. And it moves very, very quickly. It's speeding up as it comes into Cazimi direct. And that will lead us to the first quarter moon at 6 degrees of Aries on the 27th of December. So let's move forward to that. And you can see here that we have the sun starting to apply to Mars. It's within 3 degrees of Mars, so that's starting to heat up. You've got the square happening to the moon here in Aries 1. I will move this back just a 1 here, sorry. Just so you can kind of see it visually. There's the square, first decan of Aries. And of course, we have a concept called chalasis with the applying within 3 degrees. So Mars and Saturn starting to become really aware of each other. Venus is within 3 degrees, so they're all kind of traveling together, combining their energies, getting ready for a new start. And all of these planets are making the square with the sun, or with the moon in Aries, excuse me. So as we try to figure out where we want to plant our new seed, where we want to plant our new material reality, which land, we want to start to cultivate, we may have to step out and take a risk. Now, remember the way that I differentiated between first quarter moons and last quarter moons. In the first quarter waxing moon phase, we might increase the quality that the moon is moving through. Whereas when the moon is waning, we decrease that quality to create a letting go. So in this case, and when I say that, in my mind, it is how do we utilize the lunar quality to carry out the mission of the sun? So the sun's mission at this point is making a new material start. So the moon is asking us to increase our risk-taking, our need to advocate for our own individual needs, rather than always just maybe throwing ourselves under the bus, right? So this is an important time to take a risk, to take your own needs into account, to be very practical about how to do so. And that's all going to be kind of manifesting through this first quarter moon. There may be some challenges to doing so. You may be trying to make a new material start, but you may have some fear around being seen as selfish or seen as too self-centered. Those are real risks around that, but sometimes we do need to take our own needs into account if we want to be successful making a new start. That leads us to the Mercury out of bounds period. So here is Mercury out of bounds, and this is happening from the 28th to January 15th. Now, this is kicking off a phase where, both Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all out of bounds. So things could get a little wild here. Mercury is going to be out of bounds from 23 degrees of Sagittarius to 22 degrees of Capricorn. So we might have a lot of strong opinions about things. We might have a lot of ideas about how to create material security moving forward that are outside the box. The moon moves out of bounds on the 30th. So this is where we see all 4 of those planets, the moon, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, all out of bounds starting on the 30th. And that kicks off like a Mercury square with Saturn. So all of the topics that we've been talking about with squares with Saturn, the ability to move forward with our worlds and to honor the vision, the internal vision, all of those themes are going to be coming to the fore. We may have some communication that feels a little bit heavy around the Mercury-Saturn square, and that may exhaust our physical body with the moon out of bounds as well. So, friends, that's your astrology for December. 3 hours and 23 minutes later. Just a little preview of January. So we've got Venus, Mars, and Mercury all going Cazimi. Venus and Mars are going to Cazimi in Capricorn. Mercury is Cazimi in Aquarius. All of those planets are going to oppose Jupiter retrograde in January. It should be very fascinating. And then after they do so, conjoin Pluto in Aquarius. And Neptune's going to be moving into Aries. So things to look forward to in the new year ahead. If you need help navigating all those, please don't hesitate to reach out for a reading. I love working with you. I would be more than happy to help guide you through that period moving forward. Make sure that you're taking advantage of the sales for all of the digital material that I have on my webinar things. There's so many ways to learn astrology through that. I pour all of this detailed analysis into all of the things that I do, the recordings that I do. It's sort of like hanging out with me here, but you get it in a little bit more organized fashion, maybe potentially without some of the digressions that we have as we co-create together. So that's a great way to support the channel too, friends. It really is. So also, before I leave you today, make sure you're taking advantage of the sale over at Third Coast Mojo. Tanya does excellent work. So all of the things in the store are 50% off at the digital store on Spencer Michaud Astrology. Third Coast Mojo, all items are 25% off. It's a great way to mitigate difficult placements in your chart and to bring some positive energy into your life. You can find her on Etsy. So before we leave today, friends, let's talk about the hexagram. I got a hexagram for you for December, and it is developing gradually. Hexagram number 53, moving to the hexagram 52, keeping still. So I'm going to read you a little excerpt from Jack Balkin's Laws of Change, and then we'll talk about the animal for the month. Keep in mind that the animal is very interesting as far as speed goes. Is there any guesses? Any guesses? Maybe put your guess in the chat before I tell you. So the animal is a little bit contradictory to the hexagram. So I think that they are a nice balance for one another, because we're probably going to feel compelled to move like the animal, but I think that the hexagram is going to help us balance that out. So gradual advance, slow and steady development, progressing step by step, persistence, faithfulness. This hexagram speaks as a promise of future success, but you must allow the situation to develop gradually in order to realize it. The Book of Changes compares the situation to a long period of courtship, betrothal, and engagement. The parties must get to know each other and develop bonds of shared commitment and trust to accompany bonds of initial attraction. The couple's family must be brought together. Plans must be established. Ritual formalities must be observed. All of these things may take time. What is true of marriage is true of all other forms of courtship and persuasion. If you're trying to get other people to make a major commitment or to do something important, don't expect them to be convinced overnight. You must be considerate and allow them to move towards a decision gradually after they've obtained the requisite level of trust and confidence. Okay, so keep that in mind. So there's one changing line here. It's at the 5th place. It says, this story compares a wild goose to coming to the edge of a cliff. So this hexagram line says, the wild goose gradually approaches the top of the hill. For 3 years, the woman cannot conceive a child, but in the end, nothing can hinder her good fortune. Jack Balkin says the top of a hill is a comparatively high position where one is isolated from others and may thus become the object of envy or attack. Failure to conceive a child means that one's plans do not come to fruition. The more you progress, the more people may envy you. Your elevated status may make others feel insecure. Some may disparage you and gossip behind your back. Misunderstandings between yourself and other people that you care about or that you depend on may make you feel alone and particularly vulnerable. As a result of this isolation, you may make little progress for a time. Exercise patience. Temporary estrangements will eventually end, and you can begin to move forward again. Once you reestablish lines of communication, good fortune will follow. That to me speaks to not only the squares of all of these planets to Saturn, blockages, but also the malefic enclosure of Jupiter, right? Maybe we're trying to expand something, we're trying to move forward, but there's just some pressure where we're just not able to move forward right away, but eventually we'll be released from that. The way to move forward and to react to that energy, because I do think that December, if I'm thinking about it overall, December is a preparation time where we're getting clear on our vision. And then January is like, all right, let's go 4 o'clock. Okay. So if we keep that in mind, the next hexagram makes a lot of sense. Keeping still, the mountain, restraint, being quiet, attaining inner peace, enduring, taking one day at a time. The way to get through this is to be consistent. Okay. The Book of Changes, Jack Balkin says, teaches that you must make both your activity and your rest in harmony with the needs of the situation and the demands of the time. Success comes not only from moving forward at the right time, but also from remaining still when it is appropriate to do so. The theme of this hexagram is recognizing that the time has come to be still so that you can regain your balance and find peace. I like that. And I think that the other thing that I would offer with that is that oftentimes in our Western civilization, we feel like we have to go through a lot of activity during this time of year. When we become in alignment with the seasons, this is a period of rest. The winter is a hibernation period. We need to slow down. We need to keep still. This isn't the time for us to move super quickly. This is a time for quiet reflection and for moving at Saturn's pace when we move into the Capricorn season. Okay, I know that it feels like we've got to rush to get everything done in Sagittarius, and that's really going to, I think, lead us to understanding the energy of this animal moving forward. I want to see your guesses first. All right, so hold on a second. So we've got, this is awesome. All right, nice. Appreciate you, Marietta. Want to know something weird? I asked the I-Ching, when would the end come? I was told after completion. There you go. Chama says, tortoise or the hare? You're very close. It's actually an animal associated with speed. So the animal I have for you that I chose randomly through a random number generator, actually. Like Devin told me he used a random number generator. I tried that this week, and this is what I got. It's the cheetah. So think about this beautiful animal associated with speed. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. And I picked a random page number, bibliomancy, okay? And I would say that this is very Sagittarian, like where we feel compelled to move quickly after all of these letting go periods. So here is on page 60. The cheetah symbolizes speed, stealth, and strength. You may need all three in the near future, and your life may feel like you're on fast forward. This is a temporary situation and will slow down to a normal pace soon. Cheetah lives in closely bonded groups, but also prefers alone time. They protect their offspring and the other young in the group with a vengeance. They have excellent sight and can see things in the distance. If cheetah appears, you need to respond to situations without hesitation. This isn't the time to plan, but the time to act. It means something you had on the back burner becomes a top priority, and you must deal with it now. Cheetah means to stay grounded as you move with top speed. You must remain focused and pursue your goal with intensity, stealth, and speed while using your instincts, intelligence, and courage to see it through to the end. Cheetah reminds you that once you attack a situation, take time to recharge and recover from the effort to bring you back to center in a place of balance. Cheetah can show up as a message that you need to become more active and get into better physical shape to avoid health issues. Cheetah will lead you down the direct path and won't let you stray. It warns you that sometimes you must overcome a struggle in order to succeed. Somewhat like Sagittarius too, right? Have faith in your actions, and they will lead to a successful conclusion. A cheetah can assist you when you need to get things done quickly and efficiently. It helps you to think fast and gives you the energy to get your body in high gear if needed. Cheetah helps with self-defense and overcoming challenges in business or in your daily life. It helps you become more assertive and fast-paced and gives a sense of urgency in meeting your goals. Cheetah helps you become flexible in your opinions, more open-minded, and willing to quickly alter course to accommodate the changing needs of the situation. That's really important. If you're floundering from one thing to another without purpose or structure, Cheetah can help you focus and discover your purpose. It can help you to see where you can make improvements in your life and how to strategically go about implementing those changes to add joy and abundance to your days. Because Cheetah has excellent eyesight, it can help you see the bigger picture instead of getting caught up in the details. Remember that last quarter moon we talked about with Virgo, not getting caught up in those details? Cheetah symbolizes an empathic nature and can help get you in touch with your feelings and connecting to the feelings of others. I really like this animal. It really embodies Sagittarian energy. It gives us the warning to know when to sprint and when to rest. Think about how any big cat hunts. It stalks its prey And then when the moment is right, it goes. It sprints, it takes down the big animal, and then it rests. I understand this as a Leo rising, and as someone who has worked extensively with the mountain lion symbol, I know in my life I've had a lot of time periods where I silently stalked my goal and what I wanted to achieve without necessarily anyone knowing about it. And then I just like did sprints and took down the big animal, whatever the goal was. And then I had to rest, and I had to, you gorge yourself, and then you rest. That's how these big cats hunt. And cheetah is no different. Cheetah, one of the things that's fascinating about cheetah, not only are they very fast, but they change direction so quickly. Think about how mobile they are, like chasing down an antelope or a buffalo or something like that. They have to change direction at the drop of a dime, right? They are very flexible in that regard. So I think that we have to know when to sprint, when to rest, when to switch directions, and how to do that with grace. Okay, the perfect animal for all of this. Okay. Yes, love it. Sonic, gotta go fast. Going to the Y. Yeah, perfect. Exactly. Also, Kukumo from the Exorcist movie had cheetah and leopard energy. Oh, I'll have to check that out. My big cat is the panther. Ooh, I like that. Cheetahs can't roar for shit, though. Well, and that makes sense. We've got Mercury here in Sagittarius in its exile. So maybe we don't need to necessarily roar. Maybe we just need to let our actions speak for ourselves, right? We don't necessarily have to talk about it as much. We just need to do the things that we need to do. We need to answer the call. So, friends, that's what I've got for you for December. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You can find me over at Spencer Michaud on social media. You can find me at spencermichaud.com. Again, one more plug for these holiday sales. Thank you for hanging out with me. Go to spencermichaud.com. Visit the webinar store, 50% off. Go to Third Coast Mojo. Enjoy 20% off, 25% off over there. Subscribe to the newsletter. Go to buymeacoffee.com if you want to support the channel. And then let's just have a great December, friends. Have a wonderful holiday season. Have just I don't know, figure out what is meaningful to you and then take action accordingly. I really appreciate all of your support on this channel. I appreciate your patience with both me and my partner as we try to navigate changes in our own personal situation. Know that I will always try to keep not only my own needs, but the best needs of the group in mind when I'm making those changes. I take those things very seriously and spend a lot of sleepless nights thinking about it. So I'm always open to being guided by your needs as a community as well. So don't be afraid to reach out if you have suggestions as to how to improve this channel and how to keep it healthy, as far as just keeping us being able to do this work. So thank you so much for co-creating with me today. Appreciate all of you. And yeah, I'm just looking through the chat here. Their eyes roar silently. Silent Murmur says, good to see you. Thank you, Marietta, for being here today and for supporting my daughter's work as well. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Ani, for all your insights. All right, friends. Have a great weekend. Have a great December. And remember, be kind to yourself through these changes. We're all going through different changes, not only as individuals, but as a community. There's so many things that we've never experienced before, and we're going to have to be flexible like that cheetah. And it might require pivoting at the drop of a hat to be able to, just for survival, right? Cheetahs don't hunt because they're cruel. They hunt because they are trying to provide for themselves and their family and stay alive. And that can be true with what we're pursuing too, is how do we to go through these changes for survival. I think it's a lot easier when we're kind to one another, and especially when we're kind to ourselves. Try not to beat yourself up if you're testing things out and it's not going exactly how you hoped right away. That's where the patience comes in. That's where the experimentation comes in. All of those things are going to be important moving forward. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, everyone who showed up and has been commenting. Leave me a comment even after the fact too. If you're someone who watches after the fact and you've made it to this point, just send me a hi, send me a nice a wave, whatever it is. I really love hearing from you folks that are not necessarily able to make it live, but are watching after the fact. It makes me feel great that we're connecting in that way. So thank you so much for that. All right, friends, we'll see you the next time. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.